Okay, going live. I'm not joined by the others yet. So here's what happened. I scheduled the stream for noon, for 12 o'clock today Pacific time, which is 3 p.m. Eastern. And then that time rolled around. It became noon, and it's still just me. So I will wait for the guys. The guys are going to join, but I figured we could just start the live stream as is, and we can chat about various different things. And then once the guys are here and ready, we will go into some of the topics that we have for today. How's that sound? Good? And how is let me know how the audio is good. Low audio level. Low audio level. Let me just, it looks fine on my end, so. Sounds fine to you, Jamie? Okay. I trust Jamie. There we go. Okay. So while the others are having a hard time with being present, I figure we could talk about some stuff. First of all, how is everybody doing in the chat? What we're going to do is we're going to go through a bunch of different topics, and then maybe we can add a Q&A section. And I'm going to use YouTube's feature here for Q&A, and that's where you guys will be able to put your questions. But let's do that after we have the discussion. First and foremost, I wanted to talk about some products. In particular, this is the Symphonium Titan that I'm listening to right now, and this is a very okay. It's basically just it's a total meme of an IEM. Like this is an IEM for the bass heads of bass heads. Like the overall response is actually kind of Harmon-like. It has the Harmon features of the lower mid-range dip and then the extra excess energy in the lower treble, but offset massively by the most hilarious and enormous bass shelf you could possibly imagine. So I haven't been listening to this for very long, but I just wanted to talk a bit about it, and I can show you guys the measurements here in a second. But I do want to note that this is an IEM that Taryn got in, and Taryn absolutely loves this IEM. This is like his current favorite IEM. So he didn't want to part with it, and was basically saying, I was going to swoop in and steal it from him, and then he wouldn't be able to listen to it again. I can tell you right now, he can listen to it whenever he wants. There's no scenario where I would ever choose to listen to this IEM. It is that meme worthy. So let me just pop over to the measurements here. Oh, it says the bitrate is too high. Is the bitrate okay for you guys? I'm gonna see if I can change that here. Oh, it says 5,000. That should be okay. Anyway, let me just pop over to the graph. Graph. Resize? Why? How's that look? Does that work? All right, so yeah, this is what I'm talking about. This is we're using JM1 here for the target. I think we could safely say that this is not for class 1 listeners. This would be for class 2 listeners, or whatever the class is that has like the enormous meme worthy bass. Because this has that. This is just bass for days, sub bass for days. Specifically, like this is just, I guess the thinking here is like, well, the people like bass, but have they really experienced sub bass to this level? And I suppose that is a good question. And yeah, turns out that this is a thing that people can now experience. So sub bass for days. Like, yes, it is excess bass to the max, but importantly, look at the way that the slope here looks, like the shelf feature. It's not even a shelf. It is actually a slope that starts from about, just under 400 hertz. It kind of goes up. Ignore this. This is the rocking mode for IEMs. But look at how steep that shelf is into the sub bass. Crazy. The rest of the response is actually like not that weird. The rest of the response is kind of, like I mentioned, it's Harmon-like. It's got this feature here, which is, that's the Harmon kind of lower treble emphasis. It's got the lower mid-range cut. I suppose if you're going to have a bass shelf this enormous, it makes sense to have a bit of a cut there, a bit of a dip in the lower mids. Otherwise, things are going to sound... I mean, like, I was going to say otherwise things are going to sound muddy, but, like... I mean, at this point, with this much bass, does it really matter? I don't know. Maybe it matters. Because it's not like the rest of this response isn't heavily masked by the sheer amount of bass that this has. So maybe they felt that, if they didn't add this kind of dip, that it would obscure some of the clarity from the ear gain and the rest of what's going on. And I will say that, like, given the amount of bass, it probably makes a little bit more sense to have the response for the upper mids, lower treble, and upper treble to be emphasized as well, because otherwise things can sound muffled, right? So they decided to kind of balance that out with this, just the crazy, upper treble zing there, which normally for me, I don't enjoy at all. But I think if you're going to do this amount of bass, I suppose you kind of have to do that. Still, it's not one that I would ever choose. Just saying that flat out. Like for bass heads, I'm going to say people are going to like this. The bass heads will love this, actually. And I know this because Taryn is a bass head, and this is his favorite IEM right now. Let me just see if I can align this a bit differently. Because another way to look at this would be like that this is just a very V-shaped IEM. Just going to align this in a slightly different spot here. Maybe we do 1K. Let's align at 1K. What if we go like right at 1K? There we go. Yeah, so this is another way to look at it, where we say, okay, this is just like very V-shaped, and your mids are kind of withdrawn in comparison to the bass and the treble. So, not for me. Just gonna say that. To me, this sounds all three things that I don't like in sound quality: massive boomy, just uncontrolled bass, like crazy to the max, particularly in the sub bass. Glary and fatiguing in the lower treble, and then spicy and zingy in the upper treble. I get why they had to do this, because if they're going to do this kind of bass, like I mentioned, you kind of need to balance that out, but it's not one that I would choose. I would love to see them go for something that is a bit more normal in the response. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what that means later on. I am being heralded by a Blaine. So just 1 second, guys. Let me return to video here. Okay, so this is me now, and I've been joined by a Blaine. Folks, can you hear Blaine?
Hello?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Hi. Is my level okay?
Yeah, it sounds good to me, but guys, let us know how this is.
Sorry for the delay in me being here. I was held up by trying to get Andrew's camera set up.
Andrew's camera set? Oh, right, because we sent it to you.
Yeah, this isn't my camera. I don't own it.
Yeah, I also don't own it. It's the company camera. Or one of.
It's a seizure warning there.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
Well, that's so because the software that works with this Sony camera doesn't works with this Sony camera. I'm OBS capturing a window which is
Yes, I see.
larger
I
than the
got it.
capture window size.
I
Yeah.
will say you do look quite nice with that framing. Other than the weird glitching that seems to plague your computer.
Oh no, the weird glitching is because, and you can see the bit there in the edge. I'm messing with the scale to try to get our heads close to the same size.
Okay, well, good luck with that.
Yeah, well, it is what it is.
Yeah, sure. And okay. Anyways, we will also be joined by a listener later on as well. He's on
Well,
his way home.
notionally.
Yeah, he's on his way home right now. But he says needs more light. No, it actually looks fine. The amount of light that he has. It's just because he's capturing a window.
I can make it brighter in here, but it won't. It will mess with the mood
Nah,
lighting.
that's fine. That's fine.
Better or worse?
Worse. The contrast was better before. Yeah, there you go. That's how you want it. Don't listen to everybody else.
I'm gonna listen to the audience if they're like, "Yo, this is weird."
No, it's good. It's good. Um, what
I just realized the
is
problem with this. I can't see the chat because my camera is well, your camera is directly in front of it. Will the chat see the chat if I do this? Okay, good. No.
Joel says needs more key light. Background light is bad. Yes, I agree with. So he's saying basically the same thing, that like it's the key light that's too dark. So you can fix this by increasing your ISO potentially if you aren't able to reach the key light, or by actually increasing the key light. There you go. There you go. There you go. Oh, it's
Good.
doing the auto exposure type of stuff. But yeah, it looks good. It looks good. All right. Now, we have some topics. First of all, how is Blaine's audio, guys?
Yeah.
Is it loud? Is it quiet? We're being joined by listener as well.
I don't even know what device I'm on right now.
This is the
I'm on
best kind.
the
This is the
Lewitt
best
Ray.
kind of stream where we basically figure out our shit while we're.
I have been working on this for 2 hours.
That's every stream, though.
Yes. I mean, ideally not. Ideally, it's not every stream, but
You can hear me, right?
Yeah, but practically it is every stream because we're incompetent.
Yes. What I can't believe we have any viewers. Like, what a mess this is. This is horrific.
Joel, I didn't have it in auto exposure, but
Meanwhile,
then Andrew told me to turn it into auto exposure.
No, I didn't. I told you to put it into manual mode.
Okay, well, fuck, I can do that from here.
At no point would I have ever told you to put it into auto exposure. Meanwhile, Griffin's got a fully backlit window just coming through. The worst.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I don't know why we have any viewers whatsoever. This is terrible.
Blaine, you look good.
Doesn't he?
I always look good.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
God damn it. Are the exposure settings not accessible from this stupid software?
Probably not. The software is awful. That's why I just use I use like an Elgato capture card thing.
Then why didn't you just tell me to do that?
Because you probably don't need it.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks. Okay, so I did something and now it's messed up.
Yeah, this is why I told you to go back to your webcam, because we should figure this out well in advance.
I mean, everything for Blaine looks good. I don't think he needs to go back to a webcam.
Yeah. All right, let's just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, A7C is pretty good
I
of the Sony UI software. You're absolutely right. So he has to suffer through the shittiest menus of all time. So, how do we feel?
Did you already talk about Titan?
Yeah, I did. So I don't know if you want to also chime in. I just to kind of wrap up that one. My conclusion is that this is an IEM for the bass heads. It's meme worthy. I do not like it, and I am not going to recommend it for anybody who wants a balanced sound signature. How do you feel about it?
Same. I mean, yeah, like Taryn is obsessed with it, but
yes.
if anything, that points more to why I don't like it. It is stupidly bassy. They are clearly going for that kind of consumer.
How did you feel about like the bass quality? I think that's the question.
So for one, the shelf is pretty steep and it doesn't, bleed into the mids, which is one
because
thing
of
that
the
I
Harman
think
cut.
helps it. Yeah, I mean it's not necessarily. I guess it's kind of a Harman cut. Like I would more so frame it as like IEF mids,
Mm.
because it
Slightly
has the forward.
forward. Yeah.
It has the forwardness in the 1 to 2K, and like you kind of need that with this kind of signature. If you're gonna have that much bass, you really do need some forwardness in the upper mids to like help balance it out and give it texture.
Hmm.
Oh,
Um,
ew. Sorry,
and
I
it does
just
have.
looked at a measurement of it.
Did you?
Ew. It's
So I mean,
fucking
this is what I was
gross.
saying is like it has the Harman features of lower treble, excess lower treble, and then that sort
It
of
does,
scoop out
yeah.
there.
So
But if you're going
well,
to do meme worthy bass like that, and it also has the upper treble zing, right? So like there is a sense in which if you're going to do crazy bass, that
it,
makes a certain amount of sense.
it is above a kilohertz or two. Very similar to the Crimson. It isn't quite as punishing in the air. At least when I heard it, which was not with the stock tips, so don't take this too seriously. Because I have measured the tips I listened with, and it did help the lower treble and upper treble significantly. It was the coffee tips. I don't know if you want to try those at some point, Andrew, on that, if they work for you. Apparently they
I've
have
yet
with
to
him,
find an
but
IEM that the coffee tips work for me.
yeah. But they it was still too much in both of those regions
Hmm.
for me.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah.
wasn't a huge fan.
It gives me like I was saying this to Taryn that like it kind of gives me Campfire Cascade vibes. Like obviously this is more well tuned than that. Like this is
The
a
over ear
real
headphone?
yeah. Like the sound like the rest of the balance is far more like well thought out than the Cascade. But the overall kind of like meme level of bass is similar. Um
Hmm.
so
Yeah, I never got to hear Cascade.
count your blessings.
It's so bad.
It's
I
one
hate
of
that
it's
headphone so much.
yeah. Yeah.
Same
So
here.
Like
like
that headphone is why I am very glad that we don't work with Campfire anymore.
well,
I
see,
mean that and them selling snake oil.
I was gonna say it's not just that. Like, there's the basically all the other ones that aren't the Andromeda. They're just like, what is this? Um, but yeah, I don't mean for the rest of the response, right? Because for the rest of the
Right.
response, I would say this is considerably better. But for the bass memery specifically, this is giving me that kind of vibe.
Got it.
Just obliterate me with bass. That's what these are saying. So okay, but that's that. Should we get into some topics? Well, first of all, how are you guys doing today? How's your week?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I got myself a seasonal affective disorder lamp. It has increased my morale and productivity significantly.
Ours is
Oh,
right
okay.
there behind the camera.
What is
One of those.
the? It's like a sunlight lamp, like a
Yeah, it's like a horrifyingly bright sunlight lamp. Actually, I could use that as an alternative key light if
I
you
was
guys
gonna
want to
say.
just not see me.
Oh, okay, so it's very bright.
Well,
Very
hold
cool.
on,
It
let me
is,
turn
yeah,
it on.
kind of the point. My week has been good. It was. Oh my god.
Is this what you want? Is this bright
No.
enough?
No, turn it off, please. Please turn it off.
Especially like at the angle that it's at, it's giving
Yeah,
you
yeah,
like
no, it looks scary.
yeah.
But my week's been good. 2 days ago was my partner's birthday, so I took off work. We went to Philly, went to the art museum, got a nice dinner, good time, and then yesterday we ended up getting dinner with a bunch of her coworkers and friends for her birthday. So
Nice.
it's a good time.
Wait,
Yeah.
what was the art museum?
The Philadelphia Museum of Art
Oh, I've yeah, totally unaware of what that is. So
is a good one. They had a very cool Asian art exhibit.
okay,
Yeah, which was probably my highlight of the trip. But yeah, I mean, tons of stuff. It was a pretty big museum, so we didn't get
very
to
cool.
see all of it. But
Very cool. We have some topics.
we do
So
be happy.
if we would like to dive into them, um, I figured what we could do is go over the topics that we have, but then also after that we could do maybe like a threads of the week kind of wrap up. just for the things that we've been encountering as far as the active discourse on headphones and audio stuff is concerned. And there's a few of them, I would say. But first, let's get to the topic. Topic number one: meme marketing and audio. And I know, Blaine, you have some thoughts on this. So why don't we just kick it off with that?
Well, I mean, so first off, let's sort of define meme marketing, right? Because that's a very broad and edgy phrase, which is how you can tell it was from me.
Who's my edgy boy?
Yeah. But no, when we're talking about marketing and audio, there's sort of, I don't know, I suppose a few different strands of marketing theory. There's the folks who say, "Oh, just trust me, bro, it's great." That one's pretty common at particularly the very high end, where it's just like you wouldn't even understand why it's so perfect. There's the appeal to artisanal design, because this thing was made by someone who's really good, has really good ears, and who really cares it's really good. But one that you see a lot, and you see this a lot in Tri-Fi, like ubiquitously, but also in other products, is this product has this technology or this feature, and so it's good. This is a Class A amplifier. This IM has electrostatic tweeters. It's whatever. Ignoring that, of course, you can put any ingredient you want into the soup and still end up with a shitty soup.
I'll be right back.
Right. So that last one is one that I want to touch on, that I do see commonly with any of the like the abbreviations for things, right? Or I'm thinking of even actually the headphone that's in the thumbnail for this live stream. The Lyric 2 has what they call quirm, right? Like the quarter wavelength resonance mask. That's what they call it.
I mean, I'll go one further. Planar is a meme marketing word.
As opposed to what? Like membrane?
Well, no, I'm saying that having a headphone that you market as a planar, as opposed to this headphone is really good and we were able to achieve that because it's a planar, is banking on people say, "Oh, planar, high technology, fancy."
Right.
Same as electrostatic. And people do this, right? I mean, like, God, we've seen the parade of shovelware headphones that are just, "Oh, it's a planar for X amount of money. Wow." But then it sucks.
Right. Yeah. So just because planar does not entail good. But people are presenting it as if that's the case.
Yeah, there's a lot of marketing around that.
Yeah, but also I would say even the overall like driver size, for example, is one, like 50 millimeter beryllium driver is something that you commonly see as a marketing gimmick, I would say. But we can get
in general, the premise here is marketing that's based on the ingredients rather than the results.
Yes. Okay. So we can get to this as well. There's a thread that was kind of going on Headphone about this.
Oh God, are we going to talk about that thread?
We'll talk about it eventually, but basically this was exactly my point, that a lot of the time people are focused on the driver story, or basically the things that the nascence of the idea comes from what they've read in the marketing, and it could be anything from a buzzword or an acronym or something, right, that is part of the marketing copy because brands feel that it is easier for people to understand, and they'll focus on that rather than they'll focus on that not just instead of the result, but they'll focus on that because they feel the result is not relevant to their experience. And to me, whereas the thing that they get in marketing is, right, the driver story, the technology story, planar, whatever, right, or quirm.
The memes.
The meme, yeah, that stuff is. And to me, it's like, why don't we focus on the effect? Like from my perspective, we talked a little bit about this in a previous live stream. I actually don't think that driver story on its own is a snake oil type thing. It can be, but like...
Well, I mean, there's a real effect, but here's the thing. And Jamie says it in the comments, people ask for headphone IEM recommendations and also for DACs and amps based on, I want this specific technology.
Yes.
I want a planar IEM.
Yeah.
I want an IEM that has BA mids, dynamic bass, and electrostatic tweeters.
Yeah,
no one's asking for an IEM with leak tolerance.
Or how
Yeah,
about just
exactly.
an IEM that
Yeah.
has a really, really good tuning that fits with population average in 2018 filters with the
Yeah.
3K adjustment? Like that kind of stuff. Like we don't talk about the desirability of a product in audio based around the effect of whatever the acoustic stuff that's gone into it, the effect of the eardrum, right?
Yeah, it's shopping by ingredients rather than recipe.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Um,
And we're bullying IEMs in particular because IEMs are by far the worst about
They
this.
are. I would even say, okay, you say shopping by ingredients, not by recipe, but what about shopping? I mean, what about shopping by flavor? Like,
Yeah.
isn't that what people should be doing? Like, I prefer
Yeah.
this kind of tomato sauce because it has. I specifically I like the ones that have the the 3 cheese or 4 cheese tomato sauce. They have the Asiago version as well, and it's really really good. And I know that it's good because I've had it, and I prefer it over the one that's just fucking garlic. I love garlic, but I prefer the Asiago.
Garlic
one, right?
alone is boring, is the problem.
It has to be with something. Yeah.
Yeah, garlic
Yeah,
is
I
an
mean,
enhancer.
I think the issue there is that most of the people who are shopping based on a specific ingredient like this aren't doing it because they've had enough experience to know what that ingredient will bring to the dish.
Well,
They're doing it
also,
because of the marketing that we're talking about.
Right.
unlike in cooking, like you're not like it's fairly difficult to just shove a ass load of cheese into a dish and not end up with some flavor from that cheese. But it is very much possible to shove a planar driver into an IEM or headphone and end up with a response which is not typical of planar headphones, right? So
Now,
there's what?
I was going to say there is, at the same time, I do think that there are trends. And this is probably where people get ideas about, planar driver specifically from, and potentially even ESTAT. Like an example would be the linear bass from about 900 hertz all the way down. That is a particular character that it imparts on the sound that's, notably different from what you would get with even a good dynamic driver headphone that, well, I mean, I don't want to talk about it yet because it's, well, anyways, you get the point, right? Like there are characteristics that are common to many, planar headphones as they are instantiated. And then this is then what people will take to they'll basically, use that as part of the marketing vehicle.
So I'm going to use a resolvism here, but this is an example of necessary and sufficient conditions.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And thank you for saying that.
Also, so I just want to highlight, because it's not hot take time yet, but someone in chat said spaghetti is better than pasta, even though spaghetti is pasta.
What kind of that is
But do they mean like specifically spaghetti bolognese over like a different type of pasta?
I mean,
that's like
possibly,
saying
but
a Honda Civic is better than cars.
a Honda Civic is better than cars. I'll co-sign that. Okay, listen, Joel. We shouldn't destroy spaghetti. It's not time for hot takes yet.
I quite enjoy spaghetti.
It's my third favorite of the noodle type pastas.
Dude, okay, how did you feel about, this is very off topic, but how did you feel about the pasta that we had at that one Italian restaurant after the LTT convention?
It was quite good. I would put that in maybe the top 20 pastas I've had in my life.
Yeah. What they did is did you have the one where they put the truffle on it? Like they shaved the truffle on the pasta?
Yeah. Wait, which one? Wait, oh no, you mean Lupo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that. Well, that one actually. So that one, I really wish that they had given it a sauce rather than just doing butter and truffle. I feel like that place was minimalist,
right?
Pointlessly.
I get what you mean.
It was a very good pasta. I would have loved to see it in a nice white sauce or red sauce, though.
Okay.
But I did have it with the truffle.
Yeah.
Also, for the record, we are not rich. We just get dragged to rich restaurants.
Yeah, this is true. Sometimes against our will.
Yeah, it's like me going to Can Jam and Tam booking the restaurant. Just destined to
Someone in chat is referencing the most bicycle. Who are you? I must know you.
Yeah. Food review stream. Anyways, back to the meme marketing stuff. I did want to bring up a point about I don't blame manufacturers for doing this at all.
Same.
Like there are things that I blame manufacturers for doing, and it would be, for example, making it so that nobody seems to want to buck the trend of making spec sheets actually relevant. They're some of the it has some of the.
You mean by making?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So like nobody seems to be bucking the trend of spec sheets by making them relevant.
I mean, a few brands are. It's just they're often also adding the things that we would call meme marketing.
Well, okay, but in what way is a spec sheet useful to the consumer in any other way other than impedance and sensitivity and maybe the weight?
When they add a frequency response graph.
Yes, and they're not. And my point is that they're okay. Some of them are doing this in Chi-Fi, and I do commend them for that, and I always will. But I would say overwhelmingly, that's not what you see on the spec sheet. You see a frequency response of like 10 hertz to 50K, and that tells you literally nothing about. I mean, well, it tells you something, but it's not the relevant bit, right?
Yeah.
So that's one point. But the other side of it is that I don't blame manufacturers for coming up with driver story marketing, because it's probably way easier to market your product than this frequency response that we achieved is really good and you should buy it because of this frequency response, for example, right? It's probably more challenging for people. I mean, maybe it's not, but I think maybe traditionally it's more challenging to market around the effect rather than the cause.
Yeah, I mean, to my mind, it's to accomplish two things. One, it's to be competitive with all of the other brands that already have driver story, meme marketing like that. And there is a sense in which if you don't have that stuff, people won't even pay attention to you, especially if you're in the higher price tiers. But two, it's probably also easier to like serve as shorthand for the R&D you did to solve to your as a manufacturer to your mind a specific problem. So like for example, with the Storm and its slam woofers.
Now that was my favorite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so they apparently like I think it's like a Sonyon BA that comes in like a ganged like dual BA array as a single module, and then they split it to have more control over both or something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of like a potentially messy thing to explain. But just being able to say, hey, we have slam woofers instead of, hey, we have a Sonyon BA that we split to be able to control specifically these parameters.
Yes. I mean, even just calling it a woofer in the first place is kind of, along those lines. Like, yes, it does handle the bass, but it's also it's a balanced armature driver.
Yeah, I guess does woofer generally refer to a moving coil?
Well, I only mean
woofer refers to the band that it covers.
Yeah, exactly. And so it is. It's true. But I'll give you another example. Right, when Critical says this IEM has a subwoofer, the community thinks in their mind the seed is planted of like an actual freaking subwoofer, right?
Yeah, that's a good example of meme marketing.
Yeah,
I think, actually.
Joel asked an interesting question here, and I actually want to bring it forward because I think this helps us flesh out the definition of meme marketing as we're using it. He asks, is the way Apple markets their audio products meme marketing? And I would say, at least from what I've seen, generally no.
What is the way that... I mean, they talk about the H1 chip and stuff like that, right? Don't they?
Yeah. Well, they talk about the H1 chip, but they're mostly talking about it in the context of spatial audio and stuff. Like, they're talking about features primarily. And they do talk, of course, about some of the underpinning technology. But Apple, as a general rule, has historically kind of focused on features and style because for a long time, that was all that differentiated them from, Windows / Android.
I have seen some of their copy talk about the pristine quality of the driver, the audio, whatever. I have seen some of that, but
in Apple's case, they might actually have the best driver.
Yeah.
Like is it meme if the claims are true?
That's a good question.
I mean, so if you look at the page for the AirPods Max, right? It's actually, I'm scrolling through here, and I mean, there's each part of our custom build driver works to produce sound with ultra low distortion. I mean, okay, it's fluff, but that's not really making
for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I wouldn't be surprised if that claim was true compared to basically any other driver in its class.
I mean, this I don't know. I've never actually looked at the AirPod Max driver alone, but Like,
we don't,
if you,
Technically, Constantine would know.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not aware of its actual capabilities. I just know that the frequency response they ended up with that headphone was less than good.
well,
let's
that's the
say.
DSP though.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
But what I mean is, like, if you go to their website, and of course, I mean, this is surprising. They're a tech company. They're not
Yeah.
an audiophile company. There's I mean, I don't actually see anything I'd call meme marketing here. I mean, maybe meme marketing in the general consumer sense, but it's not audiophile meme marketing.
yeah, yeah. I wanted
Yeah, it's
to
really not. Wow.
I wanted to mention something else about this too, which is that uh, occasionally some of the meme marketing or the buzzwords are also related to patents that have been filed or trying to. They're trying to,
Oh, yeah,
get.
people love patenting something because then they can say, "Our patent pending such and
Exactly.
such technology."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember the name of the whatever the Odyssey thing is where they go for the LCD5?
Parallel
Where-
Uniforce?
Parallel Uniforce. There we go. Yeah.
Which
So
is
like,
itself just an extension of Uniforce, which was we made the traces different widths.
yeah. And it's like these are all good ideas and they have a real effect. It's I go back to this. It's probably easier to sell people on the story of Parallel Uniforce than saying, well, this kind of makes it so that we have a, here's the difference in frequency response between Parallel Uniforce and not Parallel Uniforce, and this is why this is better.
I'll be honest, it would shock me if there was a significant one. Like, most of Odyssey's patented technology, at least the ones that I've looked closely at, are either related to production, which
Well-
they have some patents that I really wish they didn't because I envy them,
Yeah.
or improving distortion,
My
where they focused a lot.
my thought on that, as far as I understood it, was that this also helped them with going to single-sided. And so they could just make because I think the LCD5 is single-sided.
Lighter weight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they could go lighter weight, right? Like it's not like they couldn't achieve a similar uniformity of diaphragm movement with their other headphones. It's just that this allowed them to do it easier with only single-sided.
Well, and I mean, in that case, being in parallel, the purpose is that it keeps the impedance low while still managing their Uniforce thing. And
Yeah.
the Uniforce thing requires some very thin traces, which necessarily have higher resistance, which is the whole point because you want the current through them to be less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you do, I mean, an example here, I mean, you wouldn't even need to. I don't know if anybody would do this, but you could say, Odyssey frequency response has basically no or very few modal resonances that you can see from the end result there.
Well, yeah, but
And
that's partially
the
because of the
damping.
diaphragm tensioning and damping. Yeah.
Yes, of course. But well, and the damping is true for their other headphones as well. But you could say, here is the Odyssey response, which is very smooth comparatively,
Mhm.
and here is a competing, generic whatever. You wouldn't even need to say the brand name, and it for another planar, other
Say
planars.
the brand name, you coward.
Well, you could say Hi-Fi Man, right? Like conventional planars or something like that. And the modal response is crazy.
Go very low-Z.
Right? You know what? You get what people could do. Now, what I wonder is, would that be a compelling enough type of marketing to say, here's our frequency response with this, not even like focusing on like what they've achieved as far as like the response itself, but
Just
focusing
the
on
wiggles.
focusing on the absence of modal resonances. This is why our thing is better, right? So they could say, here's frequency response, absence of modal resonances. Here's a competing conventional, planar magnetic headphone. It has all these modal resonances, right? Now, we know that those modal resonances aren't that perceptually relevant, but I do think that this is stuff that people key in on and would be able to,
It'd probably be more accurate to say we have decent evidential base to conjecture that.
the ones that
Because,
would be
like-
compared to, I think most commonly would probably be ones that are not that perceptually relevant. Like even if you do a manual cursor-based sweep for something that does have modal resonances, it's really hard to identify them blind.
I think it would be really interesting, and this is something I really want to do for listening tests someday, is have two things that when you smooth them to 1/3 or 1/2 octave are the same, but one of them is meaningfully choppy in that modal peak and dip way that some headphones are,
Yeah.
and one of them is just substantively smooth.
Yeah, I think that would be very interesting. But regardless, from the marketing, to get back to the marketing side of things, you could do a similar thing with an Odyssey. Maybe they do this. If they don't do this, they should do this. Odyssey, harmonic distortion levels, and then conventional planar
Oh no,
headphone stuff
that
does.
Odyssey does do.
Do they?
Although,
Okay.
I mean, less so. Ironically, they focus more on the technologies that enable it, because again, meme marketing. But they do emphasize their extremely low distortion, and Odysseys are in general the lowest distortion
Yeah.
electrodynamic headphones that you will find in my experience.
Yeah. There is a sense in which even
Exception to the
that though
SDX.
There is a sense in which even that, though, is meme marketing because it's so far beyond the point at which it really matters.
I mean,
uh, like,
so
it matters, but
perhaps meme marketing was an overly broad term to term this. I guess that's a case of meme marketing.
yeah.
But it's different from saying because we have Uniforce, it's good. Because you can have Uniforce and still have a
Yes.
highly distorting
Yes.
driver.
And you could have not
But-
Uniforce and still have really ultra low distortion, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that once you focus on the outcomes, I mean, ideally you focus on the outcomes that matter for the end user, but like that's still a step up from just we have this technology. I mean, it's the same as like the in amps Class A, right? Like theoretically you want Class A because it's lower distortion. Like all else equal, and particularly it's lower in the types of distortion that are typically audible than Class B. Comma, that nothing can really be held constant between those two things. But the thing is, then people will say, "Oh, I want this Class A thing," even though it's more distorting than a Class B design or a Class D design, even though it has, worse high frequency extension than a Class D design, whatever. Like people take there's some basis for this being good, and then say everything with this is good, and that's a hurdle I'd really love if we could clear first, and then get to here's how much you actually need, which would be another lovely thing to get people to understand. But like, we're already so far below that.
Right. I mean, I do think it ultimately comes down to necessary and sufficient conditions, and people are marketing based around people actually conflating those, like making the error.
Marketing is truly
It's
dire.
Yeah. Oh, what is just
That's just the topics.
Okay. Yep,
Yeah, I was
gotcha.
just putting the topics in the
Thank you.
screen
But
chat.
I mean, you're aware of that the anecdote that Sean Olive likes about how marketing was extremely antagonistic to his case that there shouldn't be different crossovers for different regions,
Hmm.
like Norwegian versus German speaker voicing. And I don't know if those are the two countries, but there's two Northern European countries that are fairly closely placed.
Right.
And he actually had to do a study to prove that they didn't need to have different SKUs for different countries.
Well, but this was also wasn't this also for like their internal stuff? Like, I'm just remembering from the talk where he basically had to convince the people at
Oh no, I mean, yes, you're thinking of the marketing says we should make a headphone that measures like beats.
Like Beats, yeah, exactly.
Marketing comes up with a lot of bad ideas.
Yeah. Now here's the question for you. Do you think that if they just had made headphones that aped Beats for, all the various different things, do you think that they would be selling more?
Well, I mean, it depends on in what respect
Not
they
more
ape
than
Beats, right?
I mean, not
Like,
more than Beats. I mean, more than they currently.
more than they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that
You
if
mean
they had put
listening?
more energy into celebrity marketing, that they would sell more, which is actually aping Beats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that the FR matters much there, though.
Yeah, I think marketing and aesthetics would have been the thing that they should have learned from Beats on. And then everything else could pretty much be left by the wayside.
Sorry, I just have
And they
to say,
probably would have sold more.
Taryn is very unhappy with us that we have dunked on his favorite IEM. So.
Uniforce
Darren.
your face, he says. Wait, what's his favorite I am? Oh, he likes the super bassy.
Yeah.
So he must
he
like
does.
the cursed one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Taryn is exactly the guy that Sean Olive dunks on Twitter.
No, that's me.
When he's talking about men, like aggressive young men, Taryn is that boy.
The thing is, Taryn is like the least aggressive person. If you
Yeah, no, he's
so.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, just to get back to the marketing thing, though, do you think So like we know that that sound quality is only one of the factors, right?
In terms of why someone will buy a product?
Yeah, so like the other factors would be like how it looks, the I can't
Social
remember all the
status
rest of them.
signaling.
Yeah, like all the
Well,
various
I mean,
different things. What were the
yeah.
biggest ones apart from sound quality?
Well, you're
Comfort.
talking about the study of what people like in headphones,
Yeah.
which I should note is different than the factors that will influence people to buy headphones. Because the factors that influence people to buy headphones aren't even necessarily related to the physical experience of the headphones themselves.
This is not part of the buying process. It's just what they ask people what influence what they like in headphones.
Yeah,
well, they asked them to rate
grouped,
things and then
Yeah.
they correlated.
Yeah.
yeah, the two grouped factors that were rated higher than sound quality in terms of their judgment was comfort and build. Because they were grouped qualities, some qualities could have been grouped in comfort or looks, depending on how you would call like design. Like, is that a? Yeah, it's kind of the messy part about using a bunch of terms and then trying to distill them. But,
yeah. So I wanted to touch on that because these are elements that, when you look at the way that marketing is done for certain companies, they actually, it might feel like meme marketing because it's not really related to the sound quality, but there are ways in which the focus on those things, like the other two things, is, I would say, fair game. Like, I would say that this is like exactly what companies should be marketing around, given how influential it is in terms of what people like in headphones. And it's just really, unless, I mean, there's probably tons of examples where like the marketing is just wrong, but I don't, like, that's a separate point. I think it really just is, it gets particularly meme worthy or sketchy when we're talking about the acoustics. And that's where there's the disconnect, because people have an easier time with, oh, this is built with, this particular carbon fiber or whatever, right?
Okay,
then
but
they
see, that's still
stories.
Absolutely meme. Like, I have the same thing. I remember it was fuck, what are they? The world's stupidest Germans audio brand.
Ultrasound.
Yes, thank you. They had a headphone that had ear pads made from Ethiopian goat leather. And I read that and I was like, is this a joke?
No. Okay,
Is
I'm
this
not
a
saying
satire?
I'm not saying there isn't room for meme marketing there. I'm saying focusing on marketing those aspects of the product it's absolutely fair game to do, right?
Yeah.
And I would even
it's
say
fair game.
I
It's just,
don't-
it has the same things, because really what you should be saying is it's finely crafted. It feels great, but emphasizing the origins or the specific story of the. I mean, and you see this in fashion as well with the exact same reason.
Mm-hmm. But okay, so I don't cringe when I read marketing from Meze, for example, that says, the finest woodworking craftsmanship. I don't know, as an example, right? Like with whatever the product is.
Well, that's relatively speaking talking about outcomes.
Yeah, I have no issues with that.
I cringe
but then
when
they
like
talk about
X hours
quorum,
of
I go,
CNC time on their stuff.
What's
that
that?
makes
when they
me
talk about what?
about it takes so many hours of CNC time to make this. That makes me cringe a bit.
I haven't seen that one in particular, but
I believe that was on the Empyrean one. They were like, it takes 28 hours of CNC time to produce one cup or something like that. And don't quote me on that, but I recall seeing that in some of their marketing copy. And it does, obviously. Like, these are extremely complicated CNC shapes. Comma, as an end user, that's not really beneficial to me.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, like, if they did it by casting and it took a minute, but it was just as good, I'd be just as happy. So I'm not. So, like, the CNC thing, if it comes up, I want it to be about, this is what this enabled us to do. So, I mean, same with the meme technology in general. This is why we did meme technology thing. This is what it allowed us to do. Joel is saying, I think 28 hours of CNC is fantastic marketing. I mean, yeah, objectively it is. Meme marketing is objectively what you should do.
It's effective.
Yeah, no, like, this is a good idea.
Yeah. So, okay. If you take a wide look at audio products and just like acoustics in general, there is a sense in which any unconventional
that seems to like the idea of X amount of that X amount of time on CNC is a cool bit of marketing.
Yeah, well, I mean, to
Yes,
me,
I am aware that there are elements of the cups that cannot be produced with, well, I mean, anything can be molded if you're willing to put enough actual moving operations in your mold, typically speaking, but like,
yeah.
we get into a completely different issue anyway.
So what I was going to say is there is a sense in which any marketing around an unconventional driver type is meme marketing, because you could say, well, like ribbon drivers, for example. Why do we care about ribbon drivers? Why is that a thing that gets produced in headphones? And then by extension, where's the threshold, and what determines if something is, like, in theory, you could produce a headphone that has the same frequency response with different driver types, right?
Yeah.
Is there any reason why? I can see a reason for planars, right? Ultra low distortion type stuff, linear bass extension, etc. Do we say any of these other unconventional driver types, AMTs, ribbons, I don't know what else, E-stats?
Well, I mean, E-stats have the same arguments for them as planar magnetics.
Yeah.
Well, plus the advantage of being a bug zapper, so it's twofer.
Yeah, and if you take a shower with them, it can also, save the taxpayer some money.
I mean,
Nobody do that.
not if they have sufficient like series resistors. In that case, it would probably just go zzzt,
Yeah.
which would be annoying. But I mean, like I've been zzzt by an E-stat before. It wasn't that bad.
That explains it.
Oh, I mean, dude, I made an E-stat once where I had the stator only be insulated on the inside, which was a big mistake because I touched the stator and was zitted.
Mm.
Yeah, that wasn't fun.
Okay. This is some like what's that show? Some headphone jackass.
I mean, it's how DIY goes.
Yeah, I suppose.
But no, I mean, like, I think that there's reasons to do almost anything if you want to get a specific result. Like, the reason Rawl made a ribbon is that it's for a given output level, if you don't care about distortion and you don't have an existing setup to produce planar stuff, far cheaper to produce an open air headphone, right? Like,
Right.
I don't think Rawl is going to set up production for printed planar circuits, right? But they can make a ribbon headphone because a ribbon is ultimately just a very thin piece of bent metal foil. And that allowed them to make a driver. Wow. Hey, Aaron's in chat.
Hey,
Dude,
shout outs to Aaron.
What's up,
love
man?
you. You are our favorite speaker reviewer by
Everyone-
far. I cannot tell you how many times I've recommended
Go
you.
subscribe to
Maybe
Aaron's
even
Aaron's
just
audio
favorite reviewer.
corner. Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fair.
It's like him, Project Farm, or like the upper echelon of
Project
good
Farm. So the real question here is where do we put, like, if it was him versus Project Farm, who do we keep?
Oh,
Can
God.
Aaron review ratcheting screwdrivers?
Aaron would do a great job with whatever he ended up reviewing.
Damn right.
Yeah, and as much as I love Project Farm, it's easier to like listen to Aaron. Like I like
Yeah.
Aaron's voice a lot.
Plus, it's a
yeah,
category
whereas
that
Project
we
Farm
are.
is very like
Yeah.
he sounds like his posture is perfect. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, no, Project Farm is how I aspire to be as a person, but that's why I'm a bad person.
Right.
Listen, I wish I could be as morally correct as that man, but I'm already intolerable.
Aaron's saying he's down to fight Project Farm if he has to.
Hell yeah. Dude, Aaron, you should come on at some point. We would love to do like a speaker episode because there's a lot of people who have big misconceptions about speakers. And also, you can tell these guys that they're wrong about the blades.
Oh, I haven't heard the blades.
Wait, who's these guys?
Well, you and any of our other people, because you all didn't like the blades.
I was fine with the blades. I just preferred the LS60s in the space that they had. I think DMS didn't like the blades.
Well, I think that saying you like them less than the LS60, given that you weren't that positive to the LS60.
Yeah, but you have to keep in mind that this is like they have the LS60s here. I mean, it's their like setup room, right? And they have the LS60s here, and then they have the blades here. I don't know how optimal they were positioned, is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, Andrew, you, DMS, and Project Farm are apparently going to be fighting Aaron. He's going to take
Can
you
I
all
join?
on all at
Can I
once.
join the fight on the side of Aaron?
No, I mean DMS wasn't really a big fan of the LS50 wireless 2s either, and
DMS didn't like any of the Kefs.
Yeah,
No.
he was pretty clear about not liking any of
he
the
liked
speakers.
he liked the ceiling speaker the best that they had.
Interesting.
He loved the ceiling speaker, and like it was particularly impressive.
Okay, Aaron's side is now more numerous than us, I think, if we count the people in chat. So I think you're gonna lose that fight.
I would also be on Aaron's side though, because I quite liked the Kefs.
All right.
You know,
So it's just going to be everyone ganging up to beat up DMS.
pretty much, yeah.
I'm
Although I
up
don't
for
know how
that.
listener feels about them.
I've not heard him. I've not heard.
Did you hear any
Kef
of them?
except
okay.
for
Okay, so Taryn is
LS
calling us out
wireless.
in work chat for fangirling over Aaron. I don't apologize for that. He's the best.
Aaron is indeed.
Yes.
All right, so we're 100% having Aaron on.
Yeah.
We'll follow up on that.
Yeah. Aaron,
Now-
our people are going to reach out to your
Well,
people.
there was a sense in which DMS isn't wrong. He just has a preference that is lesser. Right? It'd be weird to say that you're wrong about the fact that you didn't like a thing.
I mean, I'm willing to say that. I think that there are cases where people are wrong about that.
absolutely,
I think that it's
people
quite
are,
rare, but I think that it's really interesting when it happens.
Like if they have genuinely, if they have like strong preferences for a given thing, and it's not just like they made a mistake or they woke up on the wrong side of the bed or whatever, right? To me, it's weird to say that you're wrong about what you like and what you don't like.
Well, I mean, isn't this getting us into? Oh, good. Well, all right. So now that we're not fangirling over Aaron, it's time for everyone's favorite time. It's philosophy time.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No,
So
no.
this is
Let's
this
go.
is a case.
Let's go.
Hold on. Can I mute Blaine in this? How
You
do I
cannot.
mute Blaine?
You cannot.
So-
and I will allow it. I will.
So this
encourage
is a
it.
case where when we say
Did that work?
wrong, we're using wrong in both a normative sense and in a positive sense, right? So when like Cameron says, if you like pineapple on pizza, you're wrong. That's not saying it's incorrect. It's saying you are morally failing for enjoying this. And I think that oftentimes that is what people mean.
That's a good question, because I think any reviewer
Shouldn't is normative, Cameron.
worth their salt is probably also considering how something might perform for a given population, even if for them it is not to their preference. And in that case, the correct answer would be, this isn't for me, but I'm going to recommend it because objectively it is going to be palatable for a lot of people.
I mean, I have that with a lot of headphones.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them that ergonomically I just can't stand, but I look at how people interact with them and I'm like, this
Well-
seems fine for them.
And this is why Oratory is also a bit cagey about his preferences.
Well, Oratory is also cagey because he has cursed preferences just like me. Except
Yeah, there you go.
That's the difference
But-
between
but the
Constantine
other
and
way
I.
though,
I'm
right?
willing
Like-
to own it.
Like, I don't actually know, but like, don't his preferences line up closer with like listeners, for example?
Oh, can we get Cameron on here? He is like here.
Yeah, join.
I don't even know why we're not streaming from the
I literally
content
set up a
server.
live stream chat in the
Yeah. Good question. We should have done that.
Well, I was there before the camera situation derailed me.
Yes.
Okay. I
do appreciate the camera though. It is really nice to be more in frame.
Well, it's
Yeah,
also a
you
much
do
more
look-
natural look than the kind of flattened, over sharpened. You have some nice bokeh in your background, or bokeh,
Oh,
depending on how you want
bokeh.
to say it.
So,
Bokeh is the Canadian pronunciation.
Joel
Bokeh.
wants in too.
No, that's too many.
That may be too many. We may have to cap it at 4.
I mean, four is already too many.
So Aaron says the tough part about loudspeakers, you also have to consider people buying based on looks. I think that is as much of a factor with headphones. And for the same
Maybe
reason, right? I
more.
mean, like these are items that are, I mean, loudspeakers are furniture, headphones are
Yeah.
accessories. They have to be in and around our spaces. We have to see them, other people have to see them, and that we've selected them. They
Yeah.
have to see that we've got a weird aftermarket colorway on our headphones.
Are you like you're
I'm
specifically
I'm
meaning
I'm
on someone?
subtweeting, listener.
Okay, what is the colorway?
It's
Oh,
if you can see
oh, I
this.
didn't even notice that you did that. Yeah, that's
I did not do that.
okay.
A weed did that.
Okay,
And then
I
I
was,
bought
I was
the
gonna say that's
headphone from a
awful.
weed for a reasonable price.
Yeah, that's you should. Whoever did that should be shamed.
Is
It
Cameron
was
actually here, by
it
the
was
way?
an accident.
I don't know. This stream has gone meaningfully off the rails. We had some
That's
other topics.
Listen. Having things go off the rails is how you know you have a good live stream. Because I think the point of a live stream is dynamic interaction.
Uh-huh.
And there's nothing more dynamic than an explosion.
One
I'm
might even
right.
say it is a transformative experience. Okay, we
Exactly.
can go. Yeah.
Well, we should, for one thing, I think Cameron has takes on the meme marketing thing, which is why he joined, even though we can't hear him.
Oh, look at the
Hey, Cam.
bouquet on this guy.
Yeah.
Okay,
That
so
is-
if you mouth it really clearly, the chat will be able to understand you.
I just want to. Last round it says resolve. What you say makes no sense. You can't recommend something you don't like. If you don't like it, you have no concept of how that could be enjoyed. You were just guessing. You have no empirical, like, you have no Frank Jackson's What Mary Didn't Know concept of how it could be enjoyed. That's true. But you absolutely can make a recommendation based on how it performs for a given population. So an example might be for the person who is a class 3 listener, or say a person is like Blaine, right, who likes their headphones to be bright as the sun. He can still make recommendations to people, for like the K371, even though the base level doesn't line up with his preferences.
Like Blaine and I have opposite preferences, and we don't like. I don't know. You probably know a little bit better if it's how much of that is due to anatomy or not. But like we have the most divergent preferences we could probably possibly have. You wanting a lot of treble, me wanting very little compared to what might be the average. But we will both recommend an HD 600, even though neither of us would prefer to use an HD 600 at home.
And I would,
Yeah, because we
you
know that the average person likes the HD 600.
That's right, and
that's-
I
that's it.
would, because I am the average person. I am just the most extra regular out of all of us.
Like, you can
The Metamucil
absolutely
of humans.
speak to both your own experience and your own preference and your observations of, and yes, of course, we don't directly perceive objective reality, yada yada. But
Frank
I mean,
Jackson.
like, in practical terms, while I may not be able to predict precisely the experience you have interacting with this thing, I can know how this sounds and how it is very probable to sound to you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you
I
guys
wanted
hear me
to
now?
Yeah.
There is a sense in which what you also talked about before about being wrong about, or people being having the wrong opinion, let's just say. There is a sense in which this could be a Gettier case. Just inverted.
Okay, so we've discovered something very unfortunate, which is that Joel is Ayn Rand.
Oh, okay.
He's claiming to directly perceive objective reality. So that's going to be the topic of our next live stream. It's going to be objectivists versus objectivists.
Two things in chat. What class is my cat? My cat is class 2. She enjoys extra bass.
So she's also a more aggressive person?
Definitely. She's
Okay.
out for world domination.
Alright.
And then the last rhino said, so at that point you are recommending on what you read, not based on what your ears tell you. I think
No?
to an extent it's obviously both, right? Like,
Because you can know how your preferences differ from the norm, if they do.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's not
but
like
also,
the
like-
only experiential event is enjoyment. We can also categorize what we are perceiving and why we enjoy it. And why
Or
yeah,
someone
but
don't.
also
else
we
might
we
enjoy
can
it.
generally
Yeah.
isolate the parts that we know are going to be like divergent due to preference or anatomy or whatever,
Yeah.
and the parts that like would probably be common between
And
us. Like,
I would actually say what's
bass, the main thing's going to be preference. Treble, the main thing's probably going to be preference and anatomy. I feel like if we're recommending something like an HD 600, the reason that's so safe is because we have a relatively okay idea of it being a pretty similar match across listeners in that, let's say, 200 to 2000 hertz band.
we have a pretty good sense of the research. Like I think that's I mean, it'd be different,
Well,
I suppose, if
also,
we're grasping
even
in the dark, if we don't have
eschewing the
any sense of
research,
that.
we can also interact with other humans.
This is true. Well, I mean, that's
we are not just
sometimes.
brains in a vat.
I was also going to say though, there is there is a sense in which if it is worse if reviewers are only indexing for their own experience. If they're only scoring for their own experience and not having any consideration for what other people might like, we're going to end up with a lot more kind of scatterplot results where it's like, well, I don't know what that actually means, you know? Unless you just you just have to hope that person would fall somewhere close to you. And I think people talk a little bit about this. Find a reviewer whose opinions and tastes line up with yours. That would be true if we didn't have the Harman research, or if we didn't have some sort of sense of what the average listener preference would be, or even just the different groupings. So I kind of actually think that this whole like find a reviewer whose tastes line up with yours, I think that's kind of not a good take. That's my spicy take, is that I kind of think that that's good reviewers should be able to index both for themselves and also, understand how that relates to the norm. Anyways, welcome, Cameron.
Hey, sorry, I had my interface connected to the outputs of the DAC, so that's not quite going to work. Fixed now, hopefully.
Yeah, all good. Picking my cat's eye.
So you have thoughts on meme marketing?
Okay, so I missed the first bit. Define meme marketing versus just marketing.
Well, not in the amp, the source gear
class
would be an example.
So all right. So Class A has special meaning. Yes. What we're saying is that my contention is that meme marketing is when you say not that this is an extremely well made leather glove, but that it's made from Ethiopian goat leather. That not that this is an extremely high fidelity headphone, but that it is high fidelity because it's a beryllium coated driver that's 66 millimeters in diameter and has a 7,000 ohm voice coil or whatever. When you're making claims based on basically arbitrary technical specifications and or origins of stuff.
Yeah, because in source gear especially, there's a lot of marketing which is just lies and just wrong. Not memes, but just wrong.
Yeah.
But then there is a lot of stuff which is, as you say, Ethiopian goat leather or purple fuses with more grip and this kind of stuff.
Well, so the thing is, I would consider purple fuses to be lying, but if someone says, "Oh, we've got a fuse that has beryllium plated connections," that's meme marketing plus lying. Because the beryllium, I mean, I have actually seen someone say they plated something in beryllium once. I don't know why you would plate a conductor in that, but there's a potential truth there, right? But that truth doesn't actually relate to your benefit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking also of like the IFI stuff where it's like
all right, so we got a good example here. Doesn't beryllium generally reliably result in faster sound? No. Beryllium is just a high stiffness metal. That is literally the beginning and end
you could
of
have
beryllium.
you could have high stiffness thing, and it's the people do talk about like stiffness and rigidity as being an acoustic parameter that they care about, but
well, it's important.
And
there's a reason to make
it is a
tweeter.
physical truth.
Yeah,
the reason that you make a beryllium tweeter is so that it can be very stiff for its size and have a low weight for that size. So it means that you can have a large tweeter that can play higher before it breaks up.
Mm-hmm.
But this is just the reciprocal of bandwidth. So we really need to be clear about that. Like a beryllium woofer is slow.
What were you going to say about the IFI stuff?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yes. I forget. The marketing around max or peak versus the way everybody else would actually use that specification.
I mean, that one I'd be more tempted personally just to put it in the wrong or certainly very misleading. I don't think that's them, because there's products which will say like, oh, we put a linear power supply in it. They don't necessarily particular claims it has a linear power supply. They're telling the truth, and they've done it because they know people like it. Whether it's beneficial or not is a different question. But then there's the iPhone one. It was, why would they have put it that way if the intention wasn't to try and get people to think that it was more powerful than it actually is?
Oh, and making a big deal out of it, by putting it front and center on the box so that it's a talking point. You can get this much power out of something this size. Wow.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because most of the source gear marketing stuff that I can think of, it just falls into the wrong category. Or if it's not wrong, it's because they've made some subjective claim that you can't really prove or disprove.
Have you guys
pink fuse having more grip,
right?
That kind of thing.
Have you guys seen the marketing around the heavies?
No.
I've not paid attention to that product.
I should see if I could find this. I'll see if I can find
the only claim I'm familiar with there is that it is the best headphone for metal.
But it's not. It's very much not the best headphone for metal. I would say, as a metalhead, that is specifically not how I want my metal to sound.
Are you a metalhead?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Name 5 metals.
I hate you.
Beryllium, aluminum,
Yeah.
well, like copper.
Okay, that's 3.
Titanium, nickel, zinc.
Okay.
Wow.
Fair enough. Not a fake
This guy's a
10.
metalhead. Confirmed.
All right.
I think actually the heavy stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm trying to find it.
I was saying with source gear, I think the sort of interesting ones are the ones where they make claims which are, well, the objective parts of them anyway, regardless of what they might say subjectively, are demonstrably true. But then there's a lot of debate over whether that matters or not. You can do stuff which will push jitter down to a certain level, or reduce noise to a certain level, or reduce distortion to a certain level, or provide better upsampling or something, and people will say, well, it doesn't matter, or it does have this effect, it doesn't have that effect. I mean, the upsampling one, people should watch the video that's coming out tomorrow. That'll be interesting. But
yeah.
So,
yeah,
I just have to read this. I can't find the marketing material I'm looking for with the heavies. DMS was the one who found it and was just like, whoa, this marketing is crazy. But on their site, here's a fun little quote. Mastermind design. Feel the lifetime dedication delivered to the metal community by Axel Grell, known as the godfather of German sound, with over 30 years of in audio and 40 plus patents. I love the idea of like Axel Grell as a metalhead. Doesn't that just, isn't
no,
it
that
just
seems
entertaining?
entirely coherent to me.
Yeah.
He's an old German man. Those people love metal.
Yeah. Experience immersive audio with the precision of 8 drivers, covering multiple frequency ranges for superior listening and exceptional clarity, richness, and depth. This is not the thing that I was looking for. But it was the one I'm thinking of where it was like, oh yeah, like the reasoning behind why 8 drivers is better than 2. That kind of thing.
What's that?
Clearly, it's about intermodulation distortion.
There was that IEM which came out, and they're like, well, ours has got 3 more drivers than most headphones, so it's 4 times as good.
Yeah.
It's 4 times his driver.
Yeah, exactly. That's technically
I feel like in the conversation about meme marketing, KZ has been eerily absent.
Well, I think KZ is the specter that is haunting this whole dialogue, right? Like
Yeah.
KZ is the exemplification of meme marketing.
Yes.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Like,
They're-
you have to reference.
They're on
KZ.
so many levels above everyone else.
Mm.
To
We should
the
probably
point where
give
like I've stopped being
brief-
mad about it. Like it
We
is
should give
so
a brief catch up to
impressive.
the people that don't know, though.
So
So like KZ is to the level where they'll
hold
show a
on.
frequency response measurement and then show another frequency response measurement just nudged higher, and the higher one is theirs and the lower one is a competitor, and they'll say ours is better because it's higher.
I mean, it is more sensitive, which is
That is-
for some people a figure of merit.
Amazing to me.
Okay,
though.
come on though.
Like
This is just Blaine
Listen.
being.
We have more of all of the frequencies.
I mean,
that's so-
objectively,
so
that's
true.
true.
It's technically the truth.
I mean,
Okay.
it's not even confirmed to be true. Like,
No, I mean it may well be a lie, but if it was true, then it would still technically be true. So
Kevin, what's your question?
simultaneously, I'm just going to address Dranek,
Dranek
which
had
is,
a good-
is
Kevin,
it, yeah,
Kevin
is
has
it-
just been asking about wireless headphones. He wants to
Oh.
know. He wants a recommendation.
Bose.
Sennheiser Momentum, the new ones.
I would say Apple AirPods Pro 2.
Oh,
if
TWS or
in-ear
over
is-
ear?
He said wireless. He was asking about over ear.
Yeah, so
I'm going to
Sennheiser
say he
Momentum.
should go for AirPods Pro 2 because it's tuned better than any of the over ear stuff.
Yeah, but that's in ear, and he didn't want in ear.
Well, we sell Batiste technically. I mean, we don't, but the company that pays us sells Batiste, so you could go buy that.
Wait, well, the company that pays us also sells the Sennheiser Momentum, so
That's true.
Yeah, okay,
I'm
so it
kind of
says-
met
I'm just saying
on
it's
that
cheaper.
one, though.
It's cheaper, right?
It is cheaper.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Like-
so Dranek's thing, which was a good question. Is it wrong if people associate certain preferences based on different technologies? But that is actually the whole thing we're talking about. Some people prefer a planar sound presentation, and it's likely they're seeking out a planar headphone. Here's the problem. What's a planar sound presentation?
Well, I think that this is people base that on the trends.
I think as far as the products that actually exist on the market, a planar sound presentation is actually like in IEMs and headphones, something you could pretty coherently identify.
Yeah.
At least as far as like the most popular products. on the
100%.
market.
Yeah, no, there are
Most popular.
trends, but the problem is
Yes.
those trends may require a planar driver, but they are not ubiquitous to everything featuring it. Like an Audivina does
Right.
not have.
I don't
planar
think he's
presentation.
Of course.
saying that, though. I think he's saying that assuming something like a planar presentation does have certain characteristics which are, whilst not always true, generally true for the vast majority of cases, why not use that to seek products which are more likely to be providing a result that you are going to enjoy?
Yeah, this is
If
why
you know that you like the bass profile
Yeah.
of a planar driver, for example, compared to a dynamic, whilst, yeah, there's going to be planar drivers with wacky and horrible bass profiles and dynamic drivers with a much flatter one. But generally speaking, the trend holds, and so it's a good starting point, at least.
Although
Especially if you don't
conversely, that
have...
trend also holds for electrostatics.
yes.
True. Well,
But
they roll
the-
off.
Then you got to deal with
towards
the
the sub bass
inconvenience
typically quite a bit
and the
earlier.
expense.
Well, you roll off if there's leak. And
Yeah.
similarly with planars, you roll off if there's leak. It's just planars tend to, although they don't necessarily have to, have lower resonance frequencies. But if you, I mean, like, I'd be surprised if you got a substantial amount of roll off with a carbon, for example.
Carbon's the one E-stat I've heard which I didn't have any problems with the bass in, to be fair.
Yeah. So, but
Kenny,
I would
I'm not
agree
going to do that.
to a certain extent with Cameron that, like, I don't have too much of a problem with people saying, "Hey, this is a planar driver. Planar is better at X thing for sound signatures. Typically, therefore, we're going to put it on the box as a marketing thing." I don't have too much of an issue with that because there is an expectation around what kind of performance that would yield. The problem is that there are also awful planar magnetic headphones out there. So, and I'm thinking of like the FT5, right, as an example, or like the gold planar thing.
And over whatever.
Endover, yeah. There's really, really bad ones out there.
The
And
audio
it's like,
wraith.
just because they have, they're participating in, this thing that has a positive trend that people enjoy does not mean that they are actually achieving the thing that people enjoy. And I think
Indeed, I think that's sort of what I consider to be the meminess of the marketing, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like there's a trait, there may be something, and there are things that only certain technologies can do. Like you won't really see a speaker woofer that isn't dynamic. So you might say, oh, well, saying this has giant dynamic woofers is, it's a necessary condition for it to be a really high output subwoofer or whatever. And that's true, but that doesn't mean that because I'm selling, subwoofer, I should market it on that basis and then just say, oh, well, you can safely infer that it will have good bass, because you can, and that's sort of the issue that I'm pointing to here. If these things are to an end, which I mean, any technical choice should be, right? You should be emphasizing the ends they allow you to achieve. And to be clear, a lot of these companies do. Like we mentioned, Odyssey does not as much as I'd like them to, actually, but they do talk about their extremely low distortion, and a lot of their technologies, which I would call meme marketing, are to that end. But I think that focusing on we used this over this allowed us to get that is where I get into this is marketing on the basis of something that isn't actually what's providing the user benefits, or isn't
Right.
necessarily.
Right, isn't necessarily. But hey, if you can get away with it,
Well, I mean, there's a difference between what's rational and what I personally like.
Yeah, yeah. We should probably move on from this topic, but I did see just an example of the way that the community has sort of run with the marketing stories rather than the effect is this comment here saying, "I like BA treble." I mean, that's a perfect example of kind of the issue. Is it BA treble you like? And I don't mean to like single out this person in particular, but like, what is BA treble? I think that's sort of the question that I would ask. What is the trend that you're observing that you enjoy?
ADVC mentioned Biodyna base, which is a particularly good one because
yeah.
So-called Biodyna simply means that it is made out of bacterial cellulose, which simply means that it's a quite stiff paper diaphragm. It shouldn't really have any correlation whatsoever to bass. And it just so happens that the drivers that have been made out of that have tended to have very low resonance frequencies.
Incidentally, those are the most edible.
I don't actually think that's true. I'm
Well,
pretty
there's
sure
certainly
that a normal paper cone would
just
actually be
a Mylar?
easily edible.
Edible.
Mylar is
you
not
don't
edible.
Okay.
Do not
scratch
eat
and
Mylar.
sniff.
I was
your
going to say
beryllium
certainly better
drivers?
than beryllium, right? Like we don't want to be.
Well, yes, beryllium is at the bottom of the headphone edibility scale.
No, beryllium you've got to scratch and then inhale. It's not meant to be eaten.
Oh, okay.
You're meant to vape it.
Okay. Do not do that. Just in case that someone doesn't
Just in
realize.
case beryllium's actually really toxic. Don't do that.
Don't do
please.
that.
Very bad idea.
Yeah.
With the source gear and like trends that people sort of think are a thing but aren't necessarily a thing, or think that something is due to a particular design aspect. I've seen so many people saying that Class A amps are warmer. Like that's something which so many people say, and there's not actually.
Isn't that objectively true though? Like if you put your hand on it, isn't like hotter?
That's true. Yes, it's physically hotter. But yeah, there's a lot of things like that, and the BA treble thing where people will say that there is a particular design characteristic that gives a certain sound, and there are so many counterexamples to it, and so many reasons why. You can certainly find trends of individual characteristics, like those amps. Maybe they've got more even order harmonic distortion. Technically, typically those ones are going to have much higher distortion than op amp based stuff. But it's not because it's Class A.
Yeah,
it's got nothing to do with that.
I mean, maybe,
Yeah,
but maybe this is similar to
circuit.
what the person talking about BA treble is identifying is elevated third and elevated fifth harmonic distortion that they enjoy.
Or it could be the BAs tend to be higher impedance sources, and so there may be more individuation of the features in the upper mid-range.
It could be in contrast to the commonly overdone EST drivers that just go for absolute and treble insanity.
Or it could be just because they've heard a few BA IMs which had good treble. Or it could be pure placebo. Or it could be elements of all of those.
Or the fact that, multi-driver configurations allow manufacturers to be more specific with the tuning and can end up with a better result.
There's a lot of ors here. We should sort of ship.
Yes. But I think that's what illustrates the point. Shall we move on from meme marketing? We have other topics.
We do have other topics.
So, okay. Do you guys want to talk about the Moondrop phone?
I mean,
Sure.
That's a meme of a
Pretty hot
different
topic
sort.
right now.
Can I just say on that, I am so thankful that the CEO was very upfront and honest about where he felt the performance of it was.
What did you say?
Literally, all sorts of stuff. He basically
camera.
was very upfront that this is not competitive with other phones that you can get for similar money. Yeah. The camera is, I think his exact words were something along the lines of, "It's fine for scanning QR codes and not much else."
Yeah, I think the marketing said it's not good, but it works.
Yeah, they've been really upfront about where its limitations are, rather than trying to sugarcoat it, and that's just nice to see.
So
yeah,
I wanted to just kind of briefly give my take on the whole Moondrop phone thing.
Right.
This could be something that it has, there might be a market for it. It could be something that actually sells well. I have no idea. But my issue with it is you have to kind of zoom out on what's going on, at least as I understand it, with the way the community feels about Moondrop's electronics is that they haven't really been well executed. They have good ideas, good concepts, like the Moondrop free DSP cable thing is a great concept, but the execution is pretty bad. Then you have the Dusk, same problem, right? And this is really putting kind of a general sort of stink over Moondrop electronics. What I don't understand is why jump to doing a phone when what they should probably be doing is ensuring that, you know, some of these ideas that are good ideas are more well executed. You know, or maybe this is their attempt at like coming out with something where they really do nail it, right? But part of me feels like this is just not the thing that the people want, given that most people probably are just going to continue to use their much better performing phones and then some sort of, you know, dongle or, you know, some sort of plug it into a DAC amp or whatever, right? An adapter or something. And for the people who are like, you know, super audiophile about whatever their thing is, they're probably going to be using a DAP and they're just going to stick to the DAP. This seems like, in some ways, the worst of both worlds. And by a company that has a particularly poor track record when it comes to the execution of electronics. That's sort of my general take on it.
True about it being the worst of both worlds.
What's that, Griffin?
I think everyone here wants to fight you right now.
Well, no, I don't want to fight. It's just I was suspicious about it at first, and obviously I still am. But I think for a lot of people, a DAP has not been a conventionally interesting thing to them because of its limitations, or like a weird operating system, or, you know, not enough RAM or something like that. But the Moondrop mobile audio player, which is what it's called in the US because it doesn't meet certain requirements for a lot of retailers to call it a phone, does have a lot of things that DAPs don't necessarily get right, which is, for example, just a stock Android implementation.
But here's my question for you. Do you think people are going to be ditching their existing phones for this phone?
No. So
then why make it a phone?
As a DAP.
The reason to make it a phone is clear. It's so it has internet access. Are you nuts? Like, that's the biggest problem with DAPs.
Yeah.
Being
Being
able to stream Tidal on your DAP whilst you're out of the house is
I suppose that is a function. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
That alone is huge. I think, so, to be honest, though, the issue is that there have been some certain products where, because dongles are inconvenient, right? That's kind of the biggest issue with those, or external DACs and stuff. There was the one from, oh god, I've got a complete mental blank of the name, but it just sticks on the back of the phone. It was really slim. It was MagSafe.
Oh,
someone in the chat's gonna have to. Yes, that's the one, Cardus T. Like, that makes a lot more sense in my view, just for this use case, because then you can use your existing powerful phone. You've got a good, in theory, DAC, and you don't sacrifice anything in terms of the actual performance of the phone. And I think that's cheaper as well.
You sacrifice battery life.
Okay, that's fair. The one thing which I think is being missed a little bit, though, is that it's $350. There's not that many phones or DAPs that are $350. And so actually, just for that reason alone, it's quite competitive. If it's a half-decent DAP, I think there's going to be a lot of people that will be interested in this as a DAP, specifically because you can stream outside of the house.
Yeah.
And not the phone stuff is basically just a bonus.
Yeah, I think if it's framed in terms of it being a DAP, that makes a lot more sense than it being framed in terms of a phone.
Well, I mean, it is a DAP. Like, they don't even call it a phone in their page. They call it a 5G audio player.
Yeah,
and then they call it 5G mobile internet hi-fi audio device.
Okay, but now how about the other side of it, though, which is that the track record here has not been great.
Well, that's what I'm scared about.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are not going to buy it based on that.
It depends on how much actual software there is. I mean, like, they're saying it runs stock Android, right? So the only things that could really go wrong are any Moondrop apps that come loaded on it.
Which, as we've seen,
can be quite wrong. Yeah.
Definitely.
No, I mean, those could go quite wrong. But
yeah, and there's also restrictions about like what kind of like mobile services you can have on the phone without voiding the warranty.
What?
It doesn't have Google Play Store?
What? Okay, well, that sucks.
Jamie says at least the Moondrop app works flawlessly.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, someone in chat actually said the Moondrop phone is a really cool idea, but I need Google mobile services installed without having to void the warranty.
Yeah, no, if you have to void the warranty to install Google mobile services, that's just stupid. I mean, like, it's
Why
still
would that void
probably
the warranty?
it's still probably a better than average DApp, but
Well,
partially,
wait, will it? Is it? I mean, I don't know that that's a foregone conclusion.
if that is true. I do not know that that is true.
Yeah, because like I'm like Phil says it here in chat. You know, Moondrop phone isn't going to be a good phone or a good DApp, as far as I can tell. Would be better if they just committed to it as a DApp. And it's like, yeah, if we, yeah,
Well,
I will
cellular
rescind.
not working well outside of China is probably because of the chip that they use for the phone, right? Because it'll probably be something that's for their networks.
Could be. Yeah, I mean, the idea of a what would we call it, a audio player, like a 5G capable audio player. I think that is a much better marketing concept for what this is.
I always assumed that was the marketing
Yeah, no, I
concept.
was like,
Okay,
like,
so VSG reviewer at Tech Power Up says warranty will not be voided. He already asked. So
okay.
that's
good.
annoying that
correcting
it's
us
not
on that, VSG.
natively having Google Play Store installed.
I
guess
don't
that
mind
might-
having to sideload stuff as long as you
Yeah.
can get warranty.
Well,
that's
it's annoying, but yeah, I mean, it seems like it's not perfect, obviously, but like I'd be a lot more likely to buy that than any other DApp because I can stream to it.
But see, this is what Joel just says. What I've been thinking about this whole time. Why not just get a good dongle?
The
for
rationalization I
me-
usually see there is battery.
But you have a phone that, so like you want an additional thing, like you.
So why not just get a good dongle and a backup battery that's the same size as the Moondrop phone?
But also like
Reasonable.
I've never been in a situation like phones these days often have larger batteries in general, and I don't know, like are we that commonly away from charging? Like I've never had an issue.
Some of us do touch grass.
No, I know, but like even if I'm on like traveling somewhere on a trip or whatever, I never you can find chargers. This isn't like you're not, unless you're going camping
Technically,
for like
you
a
probably
week.
should not plug into public chargers via USB without having the data
That's
bus
true.
disconnected.
I
Particularly not with your
guess.
phone, which is
Why don't you
basically
just
the keys to your
use the-
entire life.
Use your USB brick or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just to me.
Joel
it's,
says if you touch grass, bring an external battery. I agree with that, and you can get one that's the same size as a DApp.
yeah.
I don't have a DApp. I don't see a point for a DApp. This seems like an improvement on the concept of a DApp, however.
Well, if the execution is good, and this
Yeah.
is where I think the track.
Well, I
record
mean,
has
even
not
if the
demonstrated it.
execution isn't completely ruinous, every DApp I've ever interacted with made me want to die.
That's why I don't use that.
Did you ever try the Luxury and Precision P6 Pro?
I did not.
Okay. At some
Will that
point,
make
I
me
just
not
need
want to die?
No, quite the opposite.
Oh, it will make me want to die more.
If you think most dApps are bad, suddenly you'll feel like they're just the most advanced, beautiful pieces of things in the world. It sounds great, but the software is just unbelievably horrible.
I mean, this is my experience with most dApps in general.
Most of them are pretty
yeah.
bad. There's not many good ones.
So this is why
Jamie says main
Lux
reason I
5K
don't like.
quit.
Jamie actually raises a good point. Main reason I don't like USB-C dongles is I find that they start to cut out and disconnect after a short while, which will probably be the USB-C port failing, because USB-C is not the most robust standard. So he basically finds them to be inconvenient for using something while he's moving, which obviously he will be if he is out. And I get that.
Well, this is also why Lux 5K and quit.
I mean, yes, there are better solutions.
Someone
For
needs
me,
to
the
make,
issue with dongles is just that I can't fit them in my pocket properly. Well, with connected ones anyway.
Right.
I just find that it's a faff to get everything in so that you're not like pinching cables and stuff. It's just inconvenient and annoying.
The Last Rhino says phones ring and get messages. It's annoying to get distracted from your music when your phone has notification.
turn notifications off.
That's a complaint I've seen a lot from people who are DApp users.
I
a
don't
big
really-
reason they got DApps is to avoid phone notifications.
I
Get
don't
USB
super
Audio Player Pro.
get it. Like, I just have my notifications where if I get a notification, it's something I want to be alerted to, and if it's not, then it won't interrupt my music.
If you use USB Audio Player Pro for your music, which also does Tidal and Qobuz, that takes exclusive control of the DAC or dongle, and then your phone just uses its own speakers or whatever instead. And also bypasses the Android resampling stuff.
Yeah, but you can't.
Which actually, that's the point. I wonder if the Moondrop phone is going to do that or not.
Wait.
Rob Hawk asking the funniest question of the stream: will the Moondrop phone come in an Apple version? We can confidently say no.
It's a good one.
Some people want to disconnect, if that makes sense, and that's why they go for a DAP. It's the same concept that I think last Ryan was talking about. I get it. If you just want to like not think about the things that your phone is basically like a vortex for your attention, and if you remove your music listening from that vortex, you're going to focus on the music more. I get that.
I'm just thinking now, why has no one made an e-ink display DAP yet? Solving
that
battery life issues, disconnecting. For this use case, that would make a ton of sense.
Yeah, but that's probably more implementational effort than the majority of DAP companies want to do.
Probably, but I would buy that.
That's the ultimate grass touching DAP.
Yeah.
Well, no, the ultimate grass touching DAP is the Terra player because wood sounds good.
Oh God.
I won't stop referencing
the world's most bicycle.
Exactly.
Okay. That's basically all that I think about the Moondrop phone. I'm not hyped for it. I'll just say.
Okay, wait, hold on. There's one thing. Someone said something in chat. Someone said there is an e-ink DAP. What is it?
Please link it. I am very curious about that.
It's just not great. Well, par for.
Because I know there's an e-ink phone. Someone did make an e-ink Android phone.
Yeah, but doesn't it suck?
I don't think it sucked. I think it just had the expected limitations you'd expect from a e-ink display, watching videos and stuff.
I kind of wouldn't really care. I don't know. Like, to me, that would be specifically for like the reading of things. Like, to me, that makes more sense for a phone. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'm thinking mostly about battery life because the screen is an enormous draw. And,
that's true.
Yeah.
But then we go back to what we were talking about before. We could just get a backup battery that's the same size.
Yeah.
So.
That looks like we're not going to find out what the e-ink DAP is.
Okay. The next thing on our list is, do we want to talk about the DMS Omega presale ending until first batch is complete?
Well, that ended yesterday. So if y'all didn't buy, it's probably just worth giving an announcement in case people haven't seen. Okay. I believe Terran said that they're going to manufacture this batch that they have all the pre-sales for, and then they're going to do another run of sales. So
my understanding is that there's going to be 4 that go on that iteration.
Okay.
So like there's going to be cycles of basically gauging how the arc of demand goes and then figuring out how much to stock on hand or something to that effect. But so basically you've gone past the window of being able to buy it. It'll be available again once they start shipping.
Okay. It didn't really need to be a topic. But the next one, the MegaFest hype reaching its nadir. Da Vinci possibly usurping. So I'm very curious about the Da Vinci after having seen the response.
By the way, does anyone else hear popping and crackling on Andrew?
I just heard it on Andrew's mic. Yeah.
Oh, that's not good.
Okay.
Oh,
also,
it could be because I know why. Sorry, I will fix it.
In chat. It's called the Hisense Touch. Thank you, Phil.
Oh, it's from Hisense.
All right, am I still popping and crackling? This should be better.
Music reader. What?
Music reader with Google Play. So that's already a good sign. So really what they should have done is they should have taken this and they should have given this 5G.
Yeah.
Cool.
This looks cool.
This looks quite cool, actually.
It's got a Snapdragon 460, an ESS 9038. Why is it bad? I'm very curious about this.
I'll get it. Review it.
Yeah. I might have to. Huh. Okay, right. Well, I'm looking into that later then.
Cool.
Anyway.
Talking about the Mega 5 EST, we've already had a bunch of people ask about it in chat, though it was earlier in the stream since we got on to different topics. Yes, I'm very excited for the Da Vinci. I'm very excited for the people who ordered Mega 5 EST to finally get hands on it. I feel like right now a lot of people are just in the middle of ordering it and they're only just now receiving it. And I'm excited to get more impressions about the upper end of the response specifically, because I feel like that's going to be something where we see a lot of disagreement between people.
Yeah, wait, the
Um,
Hisense guys do have an audio phone. The A9, A7, and A5, and A5. So it exists. This is a product. The product that you called for, Cameron, exists.
Wait, that's pretty cool. What the hell?
It doesn't have balanced out though. So they're really missing the ball on that one.
Don't care.
I don't care regardless. So
Yeah. Fair.
I do care about the MegaFest because I still haven't heard it. So
I haven't heard it
right,
either.
the Mega
What?
Fest is the meme I am. Yes.
it's
Yes, that
it's
is
the hyped to the moon. Sounds like HE1 according to DMS, or like
Is it,
to
sounds preferable or equal
So,
to in terms.
he
of
didn't say
preference.
that it sounds like the HE1. He said he has it's something like he's only heard things that he hears in the MegaFest in the HE1, something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Or it had a similar caliber of experience
Yes,
to
a
him.
similar caliber.
No, I
of
believe
experience
the quotation was specifically that he heard things that he had only heard on the
in the
HE1
HE1.
with
Yeah,
the Mega
exactly.
Fest.
Yeah.
Which of course is not in and of itself a marker of quality. There are things that I only heard on the Campfire Cascade because it had an ice pick in its treble.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. So what is Doug just holding it hostage and refusing to send it to you?
No, he
Well,
bought it.
I think it's hostage. Yeah, he just owns it now.
Yeah.
It's his.
Yeah, no, but he's not gonna send it to you.
No, he's
Well,
not
no,
gonna spread
it
the love.
is.
Yeah. Why would he? And I get it. It's
I
fine.
was meant to try it whilst I was at DMS's place, and I just completely forgot.
Well, no, we were meant to try it when we were in New Jersey.
Oh.
We were gonna, and then we started talking about something.
I'm gonna tell my kids this is Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. That's stuff.
That's such a good meme.
Yeah. But yeah, so what do we want to talk about with the High Senior Mega Fest? I mean, so maybe the reaction.
None of us have heard it. It's a little tricky.
Well,
to
no.
talk about
Listeners
this
heard it.
problem.
Listeners reviewed it.
Oh,
It's true.
So,
Aaron
like-
just revealing that he doesn't read listeners' reviews.
No, so but I think that the topic there is that, you know, there's a lot. You know, DMS definitely had a lot of glowing things to say about it. He obviously liked it so much that he bought it. But the community felt that his statements probably were a bit hyperbole with the comparison to the HE1 in particular, and that might be the case. But I think the issue to me is that the community hasn't fully internalized what it means for price to not be a sufficient condition for quality.
I think that is true.
Like, the community knows that's true. When you talk to people, you say it's not, you know, just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's going to be, you know, amazing sound quality. But we also still,
very insufficient.
yes,
There are definitely people who think that expensive is a necessary condition for sound quality.
I would
some
say
reason.
with certain designs it is. If you're doing, or with certain like if you have certain a certain type of thing that you want to do at a certain volume, like run volume, you know, you probably need to price it higher than you would if you had a higher run volume, say, with a different type of thing that you were trying to do.
price isn't a sufficient factor to determine if something is going to be good or not.
Yeah,
And
so-
I mean, if you need proof of that, go to Munich or something. There are plenty of immensely expensive setups that sound absolutely terrible.
Yeah. So I wanted to just mention that despite the fact that if you tell people, you talk to people about this and you say, you know, price is not a sufficient condition for goodness of sound, or perhaps in a little bit more digestible language, just because it is expensive, that does not mean it is going to be good. They'll go, yeah, of course. But then you present them with the $50,000 HE1, and it's like, oh my God, right? Like this is going to be this amazing, you know, crazy experience. And then,
Which, to be fair, it is a quite good
it is a good experience, right? But
Is it though?
what people don't realize is that it doesn't need to be $50,000 in order for that experience to exist. It could be significantly less expensive for the auditory
Hit
experience.
Squad is on the way.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But anyways, you get the point that there's still this disconnect, and the same thing happens when people are saying this $500 IEM is, you know, comparable to the $50,000, you know, Halo product out there. That can't possibly be true in the eyes of the community. That's you know, overhyping, et cetera, but it's like, if we take the things that we claim to be true about price not being a sufficient condition for sound quality it has to be possible that a $500 IEM could be as good or even better than the $50,000 thing. So that's kind of how I see this whole issue.
Yeah, I think that is the sensible way to unpack a claim like that.
Yeah.
I understand why people would have that hit their ears and then immediately have a less than savory response to it. But yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, there are plenty of. I would take the AirPods Pro 2 over the HE1.
You would personally?
I would absolutely take it over the HE1. Hot take: the HE1's mids are not good.
It has the Scoopy in the.
That is a hot take indeed.
It's a scoop. It has the Scoopy and like the Hi-Fi Man S.
It has a rather
I would say that
precipitous
it is
scoop in the 2
very
kilohertz
similar
range.
to the HD800, as a matter of fact.
Also has the same problem though.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the HD800's mid
The
range.
800s
I will say the
are less
HE1's
significant than Hi-Fi Man's, though.
Yes, I would grant that it is.
As are the HE1s.
Well,
Typically,
the HE1's is also more significant than the HD800's, and
that
it also
true?
has a base elevation, which
It does have the
further
bass
tilts the kind
However,
of lower half of the response.
Importantly, 3K adjustment.
Yes, I mean, yeah. So my issue with the HE1's mid range is that it's too warm, and it does sound a little bit. It does sound a little bit cloudy, kind of, not
I wouldn't
muddy
call
necessarily,
it
but dull.
cloudy, but I definitely would say that it's somewhat warm tinged. I think that is sort of what people tend to prefer, though. I mean, like, well, actually, no, we have empirical support for the idea that people prefer that.
Blaine unironically referring to something as cloudy or not was not in my audio bingo card for today.
One thing that's not often talked about, but probably is worth mentioning if someone listening is going to go try the HE1, every time I've demoed it or seen it demoed, they always have crossfeed on. So
Yes,
that's
you have
something
to
which
turn that
you
off.
should bear in mind if you go and try it, because that will affect your experience.
Yeah.
Some people will like that. I personally don't like crossfeed, but just it's not entirely an FR thing. There is some other stuff going on there.
You
Which
say you
can just
don't like crossfeed, yet you put it on the Golden Sound Edition Wandla.
No, I didn't.
Curious. No, that's true. You put the spatial thing on there, right? Which is not crossfeed.
Yeah, which I need to talk to Joel about, actually.
Yes, you do.
Well, the other thing about the crossfeed is it does affect the frequency response.
Well, it has to.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
But I totally understand someone preferring a cheap, but well-tuned thing versus an exorbitantly expensive and generally also well-tuned thing. If it's more in line with their preference, then that is.
I will say, I think that almost nobody would pick. Actually, no, I'm going to say, if anybody, it would be extreme minority would pick the Megafest over the HE1 in a sighted comparison, like because the awe factor of the HE1 is very substantial, but that's placebo,
right?
At least in part, yeah. But yeah, when it comes to that IEM, this is the first IEM hype train I've been a part of in a while, where I really felt like the product checked every box for me. And I feel like will check most boxes for a lot of people. And with IEMs in particular, it's usually hard because so many of them are like, especially the well-tuned ones, are often unvented. And so or they come in a huge shell.
Right.
Like it's mostly like not sound concerns that I feel like usually will ruin an IEM experience for me. I mean, there are plenty of ones that have sound experiences that ruin it for me too. But the Mega 5 being vented and rather ergonomic and coming with very good accessories, sound aside, it does really help justify the price and the hype that it's getting in the community right now.
So my take on the Mega 5, I just wanted to put this out there that, like, to me, yes, there is hype around the product, but what's more important is that this, I mean, you'd probably agree that this is the direction that IEMs should take as far as the tuning is concerned, even if it's not.
I've written at considerable length saying that, so
yeah.
yes, I would agree.
I mean, and we're starting to see it. We're starting to see it with. I mean, there is a sense in which the Storm has a similar sound signature, at least for the non-treble stuff, right? This treble is a bit different, but you get the idea. But then we also see this with the Dusk as well, the Dusk default DSP, and it's like these should be praised to the high heavens as a matter of practical, like, let's get more of this, please.
Yeah.
Let's get
And I
companies
think
to
the
go for
community
this tuning.
response is hopefully
Yeah.
something that the other manufacturers are taking
Yeah.
note of.
Yeah, let's. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
'Cause,
hope
like,
so.
I
Yeah,
I assume this is going to be one of Dunu, like the Da Vinci is going to be one of Dunu's bestsellers in a while.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Because
just because
it's
I mean, it's very inexpensive.
and
Like,
it's funny. This didn't come from necessarily the place that we may have thought it would have. Well, I suppose that we shouldn't be surprised that this came from. It, it's your title of the your MegaFest review that it was task failed successfully. They were technically going after Harman and didn't hit it, which
well,
which
or
ended
is
up
that
being.
just me, or is that just me marketing?
Oh, yeah, for sure, it could be, but the point is more that it didn't come from the place where the science would be around, like the more accurate acoustic impedance and all this, right? It didn't come from that side of things. It came from a product. Just this is a Getty Ear case. I'm sorry, but basically they got it right by accident. And now this is sort of taken off a little bit. And when
Yeah.
you think about you can circle the number of products that have this kind of mid-range tuning. There's not that many of them, but they're all well received for the mid-range. Would say U6T, Megafest, Storm, Dusky SP,
the Theaudio Clairvoyance and
Oracle.
Hype series and
Hype
the
4.
Oracle tuning set.
Yeah. Not
Yeah.
all the yeah. Oracle Mark 1, I think, also. I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a sense in which I'm less interested in the hype around the Megafest specifically and much more interested in that this is kind of like
The overall trend.
Thank you. Now let's get this to be as
Yes.
ubiquitous as what we get with, I've called them sort of the low intelligence tunings that just get slapped on every IM these days.
That's such a
it's a bit dickish, but you get what I mean, right? Like this is
I do.
the
Yeah.
other cluster that needs to be, better represented, and we're finally getting that. So I'm very happy about that.
Me too. Yeah, the amount of convincing and stumping and like just grassroots educational work that had to be done to
Yeah.
convince audiophile IEM brands to start tuning their IEMs more like the successful consumer like true wireless IEMs is well, I wish it didn't take as much work to get there, but we got there. Or at least it seems like we're getting there.
We could probably move on to another topic. I'm just gonna try and fix my mic here if you guys want to talk about
Yeah,
it.
I'm
Seems
actually
to be alright
probably
at the
gonna have
moment.
to.
Need
I'm
to
probably
get
gonna have
the
to
Ray.
dip out here. Yeah, actually, I think I actually have to get going, guys.
All right. It's been great having you on.
It's not actually my. I don't think this is me clipping. I think this is actually just something to do with the interface doing weird things.
It sounds
Oh,
more
good.
like
Yeah, it was
temporary
an interface
weirdness
thing.
than clipping.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
Later, guys.
yeah, either very, very short pops from impacts, or it would have to be interface fuckery.
That's because I noticed.
My
it in-
hot take is that Andrew should not be using a close mic. Wrecked.
That's probably true. But the alternative is far worse.
Is
It,
it?
it sounds fine, to be honest. It's just like you can notice it every
Yeah.
now and then, but it's not a problem.
No, there is definitely. So like this is the room tone that you get is awful, or the room resonance and stuff like that you get with like condenser mics is awful. So that's why moving to this was a good idea. But I do need some other way of making it so that I don't clip. And if that's to use the Blaine microphone, I forget the Lewitt. Or
I mean,
if
it's the Ray is not. Well, the Ray is quite nice because of the whole adaptive gain thing. Having an adaptive gain control that's based on distance is so nice.
Yeah.
Joel wants you to use a hypercardioid, though.
No.
You can just have him sucking on a shotgun.
Yeah. No, I've used all kinds of different microphones, and I just can't stand the way it sounds in the room here in this specific space, because you guys don't see the rest of it, but like I film in a hallway, like what you see here is like a section of the hallway. So, use a Umic. Yeah, there you go. Please stretch your camera so it looks hilarious. Why?
That would be funny.
so that it's not like 16:9.
Yeah, no, he wants you to take the 16:9 footage, but then just vertically squish it so that you look wide.
This is like a DMS thing.
It is a
damn
DMS.
true.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to. It's too bad the listener's not here for this, but the last thing on my list here was I wanted to do a kind of like weekly thread roundup. I'm not sure if you've
Thread roundup.
yeah, just of the common discussions that are occurring in various different communities. It could be any of the communities, right?
Mm.
The big one for this week that I was a part of, that I took note of as well, was the Subtonic Storm thread, where that eventually became a thread about, is frequency response at the eardrum all that there is? I should double check what the actual title of the thread is, because that ended up, it was something like that. And it was prompted, I'll mention it here in a second if I can find it. The thread is called Frequency Response at the Eardrum on Headphone, and then it was.
Can you like it?
Yeah, it was moved to the sound science section. But
the containment board.
yes, so I'm linking it. I will link it in the chat here. 1 second, guys. But basically, it started off with Jude referencing a conversation that he has had with Oratory 1990, and I've had the same conversation as well, where basically it was if you could have the same frequency response at the eardrum between two different products, say one being an over-ear headphone and the other one being an IEM, would the sound be the same? And this is provided that the other factors like harmonic distortion and let's say there are no non-minimum phase issues showing up, no excess group delay issues. Would the sound be the same? And Oratory's answer is that yes, but this is also impossible to know for certain that you're actually
not impossible, very hard.
Very hard, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Joel
basically,
wants into this conversation now.
What's that?
Do we want Joel?
Sure,
I want Joel.
Sure, we can have Joel. Let's go. Feel free to add him.
I'm trying.
But to kind of set up the thread there a little bit, it came from discussion around the Subtonic Storm, which both listener and I were kind of commenting on its somewhat quirky treble and upper treble response as being sort of responsible for one of two things. At least this is how I think about it. You know, on the one hand, you have a fairly wide Q upper treble elevation, which is going to enhance certain features of the music. Certain details are going to come forward that ordinarily wouldn't. And the other is there is, as Precog calls it, tasteful coloration, where there's a lower treble peak, a couple peaks throughout there. There's a dip there around 8K, and then there's the upper treble boost. And this tasteful coloration is what is enhancing certain elements of the music to make it seem more detailed. I think both of those are perfectly reasonable kind of explanations for why that IEM might be heralded in the community as being the best in the world, or one of the the highly resolving and all this kind of thing. But there's a lot of people who are resistant to this idea. Do we have Joel?
Hello.
Hello.
There we go. Hello there. So I like your room, by the way. Nice.
Oh, he's actually using a UMIC.
Oh yeah, no, the room is a disaster. I'm gonna be building like a real setup at some point.
Yeah. Also, yeah, that's a great microphone to use for this.
Indeed, yeah. I'm using it as intended.
Yeah. So I want to get your guys' take on, first of all, that question. But then also maybe some of the, like, to me, it was like, wow, there is a lot of resistance to this idea. And I hadn't really anticipated, that those conversations would go that way. I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised, but the secondary point to this would be like, how do we mine some sanity from this discussion to begin with, and how do we improve the discourse around this?
Well, I think so much of the problem here is that people hear, oh, FR is kind of all that matters. And that's not like for them, what they interpret that as meaning is I can look at the graph, and if the graph looks like similar to another headphone, it necessarily means that to me it will sound exactly the same. And that's not really true because we're not talking about FR at the eardrum of the measurement rig. We're talking about FR at the eardrum of the human. And FR at the eardrum of the human is significantly more ambiguous in terms of how it's hard for us to know the FR at the eardrum of you.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of talking about something that's very abstract and hard for people to experience in any way. And so much of what we talk about in audio is just very experiential. And so in some ways, for most people, saying FR at the eardrum is all that matters is almost an irrelevant piece of just kind of theoretical knowledge that doesn't help them in their buying experiences. Like subjective impressions are still going to matter because some headphones just don't sound like they measure on the rig because there's significant seal issues or there's significant interperson variation issues.
HPTF effects and so on.
Yeah, and so it's kind of, I think that the conversation is too abstract for a lot of people. And in some ways, like, unless you find it really interesting, because you just like this stuff, you can almost ignore it. Like,
yeah. I think that there's another element to it, and I want to get your guys' take on this. When we talk about like frequency response at the eardrum, there is a sense in which it reduces the person who loves that product. They spent $5,000 on it or whatever it is, and they absolutely love it. They think it's the best thing in the world. And then here's us dickheads coming along saying that's frequency response at the eardrum. It reduces it to a thing that it reduces their experience to a thing that might feel similar to other things that they've heard that are lesser for that experience, right? And that it's reductive to the experience of goodness that they're having with that, high end product. I think the thing that gets missed is that, and the reason why I care about this topic to begin with, is that we should be just as excited for a good frequency response at the eardrum. Like the fact that it's frequency response at the eardrum, it should not diminish our experience with the product. It should not make that experience lesser, right? And if it's a great experience, we should be happy about it, Like we should still be saying, well, this is a wonderful experience. Thank goodness for the FR at the eardrum, right? But instead, that description or that suggestion is often maligned as this is the word of squiggly science folk. I think that's the direct quote, actually. The squiggly science folk thing.
Part of the issue is that there's quite a bit of animosity towards measurements and sort of more objective approaches to stuff in general, in part because of how certain groups have acted. So people, you're right, they are sort of seeing it as you're making this experience lesser. And I think a lot of people are worried that it's then going to be used a step further to effectively try to give some objective, absolute truth that they shouldn't like the thing that they like.
Yeah.
Which is not what any of us are saying. And in fact, if you look at the video that you made and read through some of the posts, the argument that FR is everything, it explains detail and technicalities and those kind of things, that's not us saying that we know how to perfectly interpret it yet. We're quite aware of the fact that we don't. But I think that part is not necessarily being made clear to, or people aren't listening to that part.
Yeah. Well, we did try to have this, as part of the discussion. We were very, explicit about, we're talking.
Oh, you did try, yeah.
Yeah. But I do think so. Jude has talked about how one of the sort of rationale, or one of the reasons for why he wanted to move to start using MDAX is because he felt that, judging frequency response, against a target or using a graph was reductive. And I kind of disagree. I kind of think that, it doesn't, like, I get why he thinks that. I'm just saying it doesn't need to be.
Quite frankly, though, even if it, which I don't feel that it is reductive, but even if it was, isn't using MDAX just being reductive with extra steps?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just a
Absolutely.
different criteria that you're reducing things to.
Yeah.
It's not actually any less reductive.
Yeah, this is true.
Like I think that the point people make when they say that it's reductive is in some ways true, because certain groups of people will try to use frequency response to sort of shut down conversation about how
Yes.
something sounds.
Yeah.
Like it's like, okay, we have the graph, we don't want to talk about it anymore. And in that, if you're using FR in that way, then it's reductive. But if you don't like that, I don't know why you'd like MDAX, because MDAX just spits out some numbers for you, and those numbers are pretty opaque in terms of like what they actually represent or mean. And so I just don't think MDAX is the solution there. Like, that's a real problem. Like, we still want to have a conversation about these products that goes deeper than here's the graph, you can decide whether you like it or not. Like, that's not what we want. But
The absolute
MDAX
end goal with all of this would be to have an absolutely perfect model where you can take the measurement data for any particular product and it can tell you whether you are going to like that, but you personally. But we know that we're nowhere near that yet. We know that measurements can tell us an enormous amount, and people often misinterpret them or misuse them. But we're also not saying that we've got all of the answers yet. And I think people are a little bit worried because they're worried that someone's going to say your thing is bad or not perfect, or you shouldn't be enjoying it as much as you are, and it's reductive, even though no one is saying that. And again, MDAX is not a solution to that either. It's still doing the same thing, just more with a couple extra criteria.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. But to me, it's like we have a tendency as humans, I think, to glamorize and celebrate the driver stories, and we don't when it comes to the effect. And even if we don't always get it right, like as far as you say, Golden, our analysis is severely lacking in this respect. I think that if we're able to do certain things like look at the storm's frequency response and say, this is why my experience is so good, even if it's conjecture, even if it's not as concrete as saying like, well, this is the wideband tonal balance preference, etc. for, Harman work. It's still doing something that is a little bit more tangible than just, the glamorized driver story.
And our ability to interpret those fine-grained details from the FR is never going to get better if people don't actually pay attention to it.
And in this respect, we have gotten somewhere. I actually think that we've gotten, reasonably, even the last little bit, considerably further than we would have been if we had just all stuck to the existing paradigms, right? Like, we're now talking about, okay, like DD base versus vented, DD base versus BA base, for example, right? Like that's one that is, we're now measuring those differences more accurately. And so some of this
Still need a video on that, by the way.
Yeah, we do. We need to do that. But the other one is like the more, this isn't necessarily us that's figured this out. This is actually a far, more common and older thing, but the whole soundstage effect, right? A certain frequency response is going to fairly reliably end up being more well received for some of these qualities, the sort of spaciousness qualities. And then, going all the way back to the stuff from Teal and Hammershøi and Mahler for timbre, tone color, all that kind of stuff. It's no surprise that the HD600 is well received for these qualities. But we're not analyzing frequency response in terms of those things when we're judging it against, Harman.
I had a conversation with someone earlier this week about the sound stage, the dip at 2K being the sound stage thing. And I think that we actually have a difference of opinion there. We might have to talk about that in Spicy Hour.
Let's begin Spicy Hour, and we can start with that. But I do want to say I'm not entirely sure that we would. I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as just the dip for the soundstage effect. I actually think it's a relationship between, I call it the HD800S effect, where it's in part also the treble features that has sort of a shifting of the spaciousness qualities. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's challenging because when we talk about, like, again, we're talking about results on a rig, and I think that until we have better data of FR measurements on actual people versus their HRTFs, like I think the best candidate for soundstage and sort of like a lot of those intangible like technicalities that people would describe
Mhm.
is actually in the how does the FR of this headphone relate to specific aspects of your HRTF? And my hypothesis is that the HD800 just does a really good job of kind of aligning its FR to the wearer's HRTF in
So
situ.
I have the reason why I don't think it's just that. I could see a reason for that, but the reason why I think it's also down to the like basically the mid-rangey feature, let's call it mid-range
Yeah.
and treble feature, is because you can record it and you can simulate the effect.
Yeah, and I do know what you mean. Like I do think that the 2K and this is partly like again, how do we know that
There's
we're talking
there's a
about the same
qualia
thing?
aspect to this, yeah.
Yeah, like are we just when we say
Yeah.
soundstage, do we mean the same thing?
Yeah.
So like I get the 2K dip does kind of make things sound far away,
Yeah.
but that's not exactly what I would think of as good soundstage. And so
But okay, here's a I get what you're saying. And I would also agree that the like let's say HRTF correspondence is is probably there's some sort of relationship there. But if you take an IEM if you take a product that has a forward character to that mid-range and compare it to a product that has a withdrawn character to that mid-range, that far awayness aspect of it versus it's like you could have a continuum there of like far awayness would be more correlated with a dip and intimate would be more correlated with a forward character.
Yeah.
I think that that's fairly reasonable.
yeah,
And-
we're on the same page there for sure.
And then in that respect, it's like, well, if we're trying to predict these technicalities, right, from frequency response, that's another example where we could do something like that. It gets much harder when we're talking about, let's say, HRTF interactions.
Harder, but not impossible.
What are
Okay.
your guys' thoughts on certain aspects that affect things like soundstage outside of the HRTF and frequency response itself? So one thing which I've noticed is headphones where the pads touch my ears don't sound as big as ones that don't.
Could be psychoacoustic.
Almost
thing.
regardless of no, that's the thing. It is purely obviously it's not changing as long as it's not changing FR. It is purely psychoacoustic thing. But
to be clear, the pads touching your ear could actually affect the E.
yes,
But I had some thought on that. I think there is for the same reason that if you were to take a speaker and move it around a person, they wouldn't necessarily report that the timbre is wonky, even though the FR at the eardrum gets all kinds of wonky.
Yeah.
They would just report that the location changes. I think that there is probably some other similar perceptual interpretation going on when you have drivers that are maybe oriented a certain way or placed further away or something else, something to do with the way that things are actually like physically situated on the head. That could have an effect. But also I think there's other things that we don't think too much about, like for example headphones that are very open, you can actually hear room tone, and it sounds silly if you think about it, but like there's a sense in which that could confer an extra sense of openness to the experience.
you also have a little bit of natural crossfeed effect to some
Yeah.
degree, just because of the fact that you can hear
Yeah,
the left
and
driver
that
and the
was
right ear
that
and
was
stuff.
a a ratings thing for a while, in their explanation as to why they talked like their passive soundstage score. They like took their isolation and they just inverted it. And so the inverse of isolation was a component in their passive soundstage score. And I know that that was quite controversial. And I don't think that they really had sort of like any empirical, like they didn't have listening tests to sort of back that up. It was kind of just a hypothesis. But I don't think that it's impossible that could be something. But I do think the pads touching the ear theory is the more I experiment with things, the more I think that that's a very plausible, like consistent, reproducible psychoacoustic effect, that when something is touching your ear, you don't external, like your brain realizes that the sound is coming from something really close to your ears.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, it's fairly logical, right? You're aware that something is right there, and so you're less likely to expect something to sound further away, even if it was literally just an expectation bias kind of effect,
Mhm.
rather than something more inherent. But
Blaine has changed his batteries, so now he is.
Blaine has respawned.
I just want to let
no.
the chat know, guys. We are now in spicy time. There is a section of the chat where if you have a spicy thing, drop it in there, and then we will have an easier time reading it. Good.
There's a section of the chat?
Yeah, it's in the it's Q&A, spicy time.
Oh,
I'm sure if you guys can see that.
now I see it.
Yes. I'm trying to use more of these features to kind of like make it so it's easier to actually like, engage and read some of the comments rather than the wall o text.
Apparently
we
that
view
thread on
the-
Headfi is still ongoing, by the way.
Yes, I've sort of dipped out of it at this point because I wasn't getting anywhere.
That's a shame because some of the people who I'm really fond of over there are in now.
Yeah,
Folks like
actually,
Big Shot, Castle of Arg.
Daltonius.
Yeah, I don't know Daltonius, but he seems good.
Yeah. No, actually, like a lot of I was much more. It was like as soon as it went into that section of the forum, it was like, oh, suddenly we get the same takes. So yeah, no, it was even the people who were sort of disagreeing with me and taking shots. I thought they are more well founded with the responses. So I thought that was good. Anyways, so spicy time. Let's see if we can pull some from the chat here. What's your guys' take on powered monitors such as the Neumann K122? That's not a spicy thing. Can you get the Dita Project M and compare it with the High Senior Megafest? That's also not a spicy take. Guys, you're failing me.
How do you actually view the questions?
Oh, you click on the spicy. You know what? This isn't
No,
working.
only you can see that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
this
think only
isn't
you can
working,
see
so
that.
I'm just going to get rid of this. There is one here. Frequency response graphs are incomplete and incomprehensible, and hence shouldn't matter beyond checking for overall balance and extension.
Incomprehensible
Hard
is interesting.
disagree.
So
Oh, okay.
what does incomprehensible mean? For that matter, what does incomplete mean here?
I don't hate that take, just because the conclusion is not an awful one, but I don't know about incomprehensible and incomplete. Right? Like I do think it's reasonable to, mainly look at frequency response in terms of wideband, kind of like the general balance, an extension and how it relates to listener preference, for example. But I don't know that I would say that. Okay, here's the question for you, Blaine. How focused should graph readers be on various features, various unsmoothed features?
I mean, okay, so if it's not visible when the smoothing is to a reasonable level, let's say 1/12 octave or even 1/6, odds are that it's not something that's a significant problem. That doesn't mean it's an inaudible thing. So I guess the question here is, what are you trying to analyze? Are you trying to say, will these headphones be generally good or bad? In that case, then very small high Q features are by definition not going to be big things. If the question is, why do I hear these two headphones that have generally similar timbre as being different, then that might be a good time to look at small features. Of course, then you have to bear in mind the small features that you would have to look at would be the ones that occur on your own head.
So that's where, to me, I get into this sort of like, I don't know if we should be judging headphones based on the small features because those aren't necessarily going to be tracked from person to person or from the rig to person, right? And it's also another thing that I don't know. Maybe we can talk about this a bit because it's one of my sort of spicier takes, that there is another reason why raw graphs are actually still good. And it's that sometimes you can have headphones where the overall shape of the response is reasonable, but it is slightly shifted or slightly just like not in the spot that it would be, ideal for. But then when you put the headphone on your head, it actually is. And that, if you show that on a compensated or calibrated graph, just looks up like a whole bunch of really, weird peaks and dips and stuff like that, because they're not in the fine-grained spots, given that it's a fairly fine, it's like a 1/12 for the DFH or TF.
Are we talking about like upper treble features, like above
5K?
4K?
Above 5K.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I think you should basically ignore the features that we see above 5K.
But
for the most part.
totally. But what I tend to notice is that there are sometimes features that show up on the rig in different spots. The same features show up, but they're just in slightly different spots. So things sort of shift a little bit. And to me, that means that in a raw graph, you'd be able to see, okay, at the very least, the shape of the response is reasonable, even if some of those features, they're maybe not in desirable spots on the rig, right? But then, you can at least have a more fair assessment of the response than, there's just a whole bunch of like weird peaks and dips throughout, if that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, and again, I think that the spicy take saying that the graphs are incomplete, I completely agree with. There's so much more data that could be collected and analyzed, and the data that we do have, I don't think we're analyzing in like the best possible way. We don't really have a good understanding of how FR on the various rigs we have correlate to FR on humans with various kinds of headphones. And so we can have sort of lots of hypotheses, but like there's lots we just don't know about, especially the treble. Like the 8K peak that we see on so many 5128 measurements. How much should we, like, for the most part, I ignore it because I never hear a peak at 8K. But I also have on-head measurements which show that usually I have a pretty considerable dip with most headphones at around 8K. And so...
Measured at that point.
Yeah, measured at that point. And it does track perceptually, at least, far better than the measurement rig result when I use EQ based on that. But I can't... Again, I'm also just one person. Like, we need broader data sets to be able to say, okay, should a headphone measure with an 8K peak in order for it to have, on average, good treble for most people?
Well, and there's a particular annoyance when it comes to the small features and soundstage and stuff, because we know a fair bit about what cues cue us for directionality, and they are primarily fairly high Q features of the upper mid-range and treble, which means that for headphones, predicting subjective spatiality is a crapshoot.
Yeah.
So at the very least, I mean, like, we shouldn't be literalists about, exactly the fine-grained stuff that we see in the graph above a certain point. My take on this is that we should still capture it, but I do worry about some of that the default ways that people approach graphs is to be a literalist about it, like to say, well, this is exactly how this is going to perform on my head if I were to buy this product. And we know that that's not the case, unfortunately.
There's also just the issue that if we were to provide, raw graphs, completely no smoothing or anything, then it makes it very difficult to interpret for the stuff that we do have a better understanding of.
Yeah. I mean, there's
just
a lot of
treating more broadband stuff. So.
There's a lot of... I mean, FR analysis is something where we ideally should be pushing to improve the field. Like, Constantine has done a lot of good stuff there. I'm always impressed with his stuff in terms of showing, this is like the area plots thing, for example. I think that's really interesting, saying, this is how the headphone performed across X units. There were variations at this frequency were such and such at the 50th percentile, at the 90th percentile, what have you. Unfortunately, Joel has pointed this out, the number of factors that influence variation of headphones are pretty meaningful. There's unit variation. There's the variation over the lifespan of a given unit if it changes, for example, the changes of ear pads, etc. There is variation with interaction with the human head. There's the variation of its positioning. And if you put them all together, you get very large uncertainty windows.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah, and the vast majority of people have not grasped how large that is. Like, we're
Vast
talking
majority.
20,
Yeah.
20, 30 dB potentially.
I was
difference between people.
I was having this like ridiculous argument with this, but probably was not a good use of my time. But somebody in the comments on the Storm video was basically complaining that there was a channel imbalance in the upper treble, talking about how, oh, I can't believe that this would have 80% channel imbalance difference. And also, I mean, the person wasn't familiar with the rocking mode issue in at like 120 hertz or whatever it is, right? But so like, you know, obviously to me it's like, okay, I know I can't expect everybody to like understand that, but like at the very least there is a problem when people's default approach to data lacks any of that context, that positional variation is also a massive factor, because these things are highly sensitive, as are our ears, to positional variation. So yeah, I mean, to me the solution is for people to just get deeper into the, you know, into the weeds on this stuff to learn that. But like, it would be great if there is a easier first round for people, an on-ramp of sorts, to make it so that those default you know, wrong takes don't take hold.
I mean, we see in the text here, in the chat here, someone who's still on the misconception here. Abi is saying apparently there's no data missing from an FR graph, sarcastically, but there isn't data missing in a single FR graph. The problem is not that a single impulse response of a headphone is not being analyzed sufficiently. It's that headphones cannot be predicted for every case from a single, in the same way that a picture of a car may be accurate, but it shows you a car in a position at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's actually a really helpful way to think about it, is when you think of measurement rigs as if they were like single instances of people. Like, if you put a headphone onto a 5128 and you do a measurement, that measurement does represent with a pretty high degree of certainty what Mr. 5128 heard. But it's not going to represent what you hear, because you are not exactly identical to the 5128. And so there's nothing missing for the 5128, but obviously we don't care about what Mr. 5128 heard. We care about what real people hear. And real people, unfortunately, like, are slightly different from the measurement rigs. We know the measurement rigs are not perfect.
Well, it would be like a person, right? Somewhere in that would fall within the range of HRTF.
Yeah,
right?
but we also know that the rigs often don't even represent like a median person very well. They don't represent what you would get if you averaged a bunch of people's HRTFs. And again, we need
to be fair
on that.
That methodology may not be the correct one.
Yeah, because an averaged, a mean HRTF might not represent any individual HRTF very well. Well, we know it doesn't. Particularly directional ones.
Yeah.
Wasn't there that story about I think it was a fighter jet that was being designed, and they took measurements of a bunch of different pilots and stuff to create a seat which was meant to be as sort of compact and fit everything in and optimally as possible. And it fit no one, because there was no one that fit the average measurements that they'd worked out.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine that fighter jet pilots, there's some degree of a bimodal distribution in their physical attributes.
That's probably true.
So yeah, all of this to say that it's not that we're not collecting something that would be important for understanding what the measurement rig heard, but that understanding what the measurement rig heard is not quite the same as understanding what people will hear. And there's lots of work to be done in terms of how can we take the data from measurement rigs and get more useful results in terms of interpreting that for people.
I think that's the important point to drive home, though, because a lot of people will hear something like that and go, "Oh, well, I'll just pay no attention to them then. They're useless."
Mhm.
And that's not the point. The point is that
Yeah.
they are useful. They're not perfect, and we know that, but they will only get better as more sort of correlations are built up and there is more data. So we know that they're not perfect, but it's
And
not a binary thing. It's not either they're perfect or they're useless. It's
between
somewhere in the
200
middle right
hertz,
now.
between 200 hertz and about 2 kilohertz, they're very good. They will track not perfectly, but with a pretty high degree of certainty, you can expect that you're going to get something very close to on the rig
Well,
in that range at least.
it would also be significantly higher than that if you are a person such that your features line up with either any of the particular rigs, right, that get used. So, you know, if you have an ear that is similar to Mr. 5 and 2/8, or if you have an ear that is similar to Mr. Gross, you know,
Yeah.
things would be pretty similar for you. But that's also where it's not the rigs that are, you know, it's not about accuracy of the rig. It's more about like the fact that people have varying HRTFs that throws a wrench into this problem.
We should probably check
All right.
the chat here.
Spicy time, guys. Let's go through some peppers. So someone says,
Xylite says, squiggly evangelists are not immune to confirmation bias when interpreting graphs. The coldest take I have ever
Yeah,
heard.
that's super cold.
how about this? I think soundstage for the HD800S is too wide. It's like I want to grab sounds and pull them closer to me. I don't like it. I just wanted to read that because it's another, you know, poo-pooing.
I'm
the,
kind of in that camp as
HD800S.
well a little bit. For me, I find that the HD800 sounds very big, but everything sounds quite big, and stuff that sort of on other headphones or should sound a little bit closer kind of doesn't. It's got a bit of a sort of diffused effect for me. So I get what he's talking about there.
The new Focal products are uglier than the old Focal products. I'm not a fan
Well, it depends
of
on how old we talk about. The Focal Listen, the Focal Spirit.
I
those
think
were
probably they
ugly
mean
as
like the
fuck.
Utopia and the Clear. I think the Clear is still one of the better looking headphones. You know,
Yeah, I tend to agree. Well, I don't know. I'm a little torn. Like, I think that some of like for example, if you compare the Clear to the Clear MG, I totally understand what they were going for with the Clear MG, and I would think that the Clear MG is maybe a little bit more fashionable right now, but I like the Clear better.
I think the Clear looks far superior to the Clear MG.
Same.
Newtopia looks pretty good though.
Yeah, Newtopia is nice.
Yeah. Let's see. The more you guys talk about something, the more confused I get. Keep it simple. All right, so we're doing our job.
For Blaine, speaking of meme marketing and audio, there's many audio reviewers who underestimate or ignore the importance of keeping real world perception of acoustic instruments outside the digital realm. Wait a second, getting a sense of deja vu here. I'm fairly sure that we've had this argument before because I
think
don't really
twice
like...
actually
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. I do not like the originalist take on that because obviously you do not know the actual sound of the instrument that was recorded, which is being reproduced. And indeed, that is not necessarily what you're trying to reproduce in the first place. You are trying to have a good musical experience, not necessarily a musical experience like being in the recording studio. But I mean,
See, I don't know.
that's old hat.
Yeah, we've been over that ground, I think.
I like beating that horse.
See, I still think there are probably trends that, like, you know, people will generally prefer the recording of a acoustic guitar to sound kind of like an acoustic guitar does in real life, and there would be like a correlation there.
I have a take that's actually nuclear hot on this one.
Yeah.
The people I know who have more direct experience with acoustic music and where acoustic music played unamplified was a larger share of the music they either listened to growing up or just that they listen to in general, tend to prefer brighter treble in headphones than people who mostly listen to electronic or just recordings of things.
Is that really a hot take?
I don't know, but it's my take. I grew up listening to my mother's acoustic, obviously piano.
I don't think that that's a terrible. To me, that this is.
But like people who have a better reference like it brighter is, I think
that that's
to some people.
I have I have a friend who is a primarily acoustic musician who really likes his DT 990s. So
I mean, but there could be some there could be a confounding variable there, which is just, poor taste. um,
Ignore the post by the guy named Cello.
okay. Beyerdynamic earpads always look dirty. You should probably clean them. Or you mean just the way that they look?
No, they do always look dirty.
Yeah.
It's true.
We should be smoothing Oratory's DFH-RTF for the 5128 more up to 4 to 5K or so. Now, see, I think Blaine, you and I talked about this a long time ago. I honestly, I don't have like a particularly strong opinion here because I can see the rationale. But what do you guys think about the idea of smoothing the DFH-RTF? Not just for the 5128, but just in general. Like, yeah.
The smoothing of the HRTF should be equivalent to the smoothing of whatever it's being subtracted to. Like
your take is that they should match.
Yeah.
So if we're going,
I don't even think that's my take. I think that's just the right take. But
I have a hot take on this, but I think
yes,
it would be
please.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's 2 in the weeds for this.
Oh, good.
Two into the weeds for this. Okay.
My hot take is that we shouldn't even be using rig-specific HRTFs up to 4
Oh, you think we
5K.
should be using generic HRTF? Yeah,
It should be a generic HRTF that starts being blended with the rig up to 4 to
But
5.
that's because you have thought a process about the drastic, the underrepresentation of HPTF effects. Generally, which is to me that's reasonable. I would need to see more. We could test for this, I think, to see what the actual.
We absolutely can test for it.
Yeah.
Like the work that I've done on this has been like just pulling together random data from the internet where it exists and doing the best we can with that data. But like if we could actually collect data on this and control for a lot of the confounding variables, I think that you could get significantly better results out of a lot of rigs.
It's quite possible. Let's see. Separating it as tone and technicalities is still the best compromise for writing review, since how to interpret it from FR graph is still not there yet. I would slightly caveat or suggest a asterisk there. I hate the term technicalities because it makes people think that there is there's like a acoustic property that's somehow separate that we aren't measuring, and it leads people to these weird
but have
ideas.
You considered? Can you measure detail?
So
Andrew destroyed.
So you can you measure detail? Okay. People will often say
Can you measure
this.
it? Yes. Can you interpret it perfectly? Not yet.
Yeah. Can you measure the thing that, is responsible for your report of detail? Yes. Can you correlate them? No. Or at least not in all cases. I think that you can do certain things that over, say you take a group of like 50 people, you'll probably, score more positively with that correlation. But we end up with the private language problem as being kind of at the core of this.
Oh, hell yeah, it's philosophy time again.
But yeah, I think separating as objective and subjective, or like, tonal balance and subjective, or I know Blaine hates those words, but he can go, pound sand. So some sort of, differentiation of like, here's how the thing performs acoustically in a given condition here that I can graph, and here's the experience that I get from listening to this thing and describing the experience, and having those two be sort of separated, I think makes a certain amount of sense. I just don't like calling it technicalities or leading people down the path to conclusions about transducers that line up more with the marketing than they do with the actual effects, which goes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I think that maybe, and I wish that, so I think a lot of this sort of tonal technical distinction, I don't know how far back it goes, but I think it was really like,
well, actually, it goes back
solidified in the discourse by Critical.
Critical has popularized it. It actually goes back further than that, considerably.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. But I
The
think that-
idea that there are exactly two categories, I think, is a criticalism. It used to be that there would be like 7 factors people would talk about. This one's detailed, this one sounds stagey, this one's got Pratt.
But even Tyler Hertson's, used technicalities as a
Yeah.
reference to, some of this.
But
stuff.
anyways, the point I'm making there is, and Kryn has never said this publicly, and I've never asked him, but my guess is that what he's doing often when he reviews something is that some of his technical score is coming from him EQing to what he would expect, like based on the graph, and then listening and okay, how good does this sound now once I've
done
eliminated
that.
the tonal aspect. And
Yeah.
I actually think that's a really useful way to do things.
Yep.
Because I think that there's, so like for example, these headphones to me EQ'd to Harman based on a measurement on the rig sound significantly better to me than a lot of my other headphones. And so I would say that these have good, and I know you hate this word, technicalities,
Mhm.
but subjectively they sound good to me, better than other headphones after EQ.
But
now
a lot of that is also wide EQ, wide Q filters,
Yeah.
And so
Now,
it's like
I can actually
As-
show you measurements that show that this headphone matches well with my HRTF.
Yeah.
So you can measure that, but unless you're measuring on your own head, which for most people is not going to be a realistic thing to do.
I have one other point about this. I know that I beat this horse. This is my horse to beat every stream. But the other issue with the term and splitting it up like that is that what you just said about the way that particular headphone lines up with your HRTF means that this is a moving variable. So like to describe it as technicalities, it almost creates this weird constant about the product or about the driver or whatever that is not constant in practice.
Yeah.
So
And I think that so much of the audio community revolves around us sharing impressions,
Mhm.
and someone will say, I think headphone A is good, and then another person will be like, what, you think headphone A is good? I
You're
can't
deaf.
believe that. I thought that headphone A sounded awful. And we assume that that's, or I think a lot of people's assumption is that that's a difference in preference.
Yeah.
That they heard the same thing and they just have different taste, and so they're looking for a different outcome. But I think that we've often ignored the possibility that it's like, no, the two people just heard very different things and they actually want things to sound the same.
yeah, they had very different things at their eardrum as a result
Yeah,
of all the
exactly.
HPTF and HRTF.
Or they had the same thing at their eardrum, but their HRTFs are quite different.
Yes,
And so their
exactly.
brain interpreted that differently.
Yes.
Um,
A
Especially with
contention
IEMs.
which it must be emphasized, although it is very, very likely to be true, we actually probably should test directly.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Next one here is that headphones on average cost about 20% of their retail price to make.
I think that that's actually a low estimate for high-end headphones and a very like
material like BOM, right?
yeah, no, I think that is a high estimate for high-end headphones. Like a lot of them will cost less than 20% BOM. And I think that's a very low estimate for lower-end headphones where BOM might be very close to the total MSRP.
That doesn't factor in necessarily like the overall cost to bring that headphone to market though.
Well, yeah, I mean, COGS is a different variable, but even if you look
Yeah.
at COGS, the COGS of something like an HD800, I'm sure is not 40%. Like that would be insane.
Yeah.
You should probably clarify COGS is cost of goods sold.
Yeah, sorry. And BOM is bill of materials, which is the actual components which go into it, but not the other factors like labor input, transportation, et cetera, et cetera.
Where do you put the so a lot of the time it's like tooling costs, say like $100,000 or whatever for a given project.
So you're asking a question of amortization.
Yeah, like
So
a lot
this
of the
is
time.
a question
yeah.
of accounting.
But that's why a lot of these products cost what they do, is that manufacturers are trying to, figure out, okay, how, like, if I sell X amount of these, right, what do I need to price it at to be able to cover the cost of the cash flows
and
for
to
tooling
just
and so on.
pay the people who developed it.
Yeah,
like-
and for development costs and also to turn a profit because they are businesses, right? That's the whole point.
I think that the 20% figure it's also just not unique to audio. People just don't understand the economics of actually bringing a product to market, and that it's very, very often that the cost of the materials is just a pretty small portion of your overall costs.
And a good example of this is the Vision Pro, right? Like the Vision Pro's BOM came out, and that was like what 35%,
Yeah,
which
but
is
of
actually
course-
quite high
Yeah.
from my point of view for a
I was
device.
surprised how high it was.
But the thing is, people go into that and they think, okay, well, that means that Apple must have a 65% profit margin, which obviously is not how it works.
Yeah. Well, and like I think the Vision Pro is maybe a little bit easier for people to imagine. Like the Vision Pro, think about the R&D that would have had to go into developing the Vision Pro. Like they had to invent a few brand new technologies in order to bring the Vision Pro to market. And so
In high-end audio, there's also much more significant marketing costs than a lot of other ones might have. I mean, just the cost of going to a can jam can be massive. It can be, well, in some cases, probably tens of thousands of dollars. People might think it's a whatever it is, a couple grand or something to rent it. No, you've got to send staff, you've got to have hotels, you've got to rent the booth, you've got to ship everything there and insure it. You're not working and doing other stuff whilst you're there. There's tens of thousands of dollars to go to a can jam if you've got more than a couple staff.
You also have to pay to put tons of money to put that high res audio sticker on the box.
Yes.
An underscore planar driver.
Yeah, and this is all stuff which is amortized over a small number of units, because in a market like this, the fact is it doesn't actually matter if you made the best headphone in the world. You could make the best headphone in the world and sell it for $500, and it might not actually sell that well because the market itself is still relatively small. Blaine, stop. And also, I mean, there's other factors just like I've had several manufacturers tell me that they've had to increase or price new products higher because otherwise they're worried that people will think that they're not as good as their competitors because they're not as expensive.
Veblen effect.
Yeah.
Which is annoying, but
Yes, it is annoying, but like you also can't blame them because you do see a lot of people go, well, how can the MegaFest compete with HE1 or whatever? It's the $500. It doesn't make sense, and so people will just completely ignore it.
Yeah.
Especially if it's outside the range where people can buy it for, if it's a $30 IM or something, there's enough people that can just buy it to try it and see if it's true. Mm-hmm. If it's a $500 or $2,000 headphone, people can't just do that.
One thing that is implicit in Rob's comment, and that I do want to just zigzag back around to, is the premise that audio has atypically high profit margins. And I think that claim is one which is empirically demonstrable to be true in some cases and very much false in others. Like there are definitely businesses, cables, where there are quite substantial margins, but then we do see companies that sell $10,000. I mean, Stax very nearly went bankrupt, right? And certainly that's not because they weren't having enough margin from perspective of their material inputs, but in the case of Stax, it's because they basically ran up a huge R&D bill and then couldn't recoup it. So objectively, we're looking at companies that are ranging from highly profitable to, in many cases, completely unprofitable, even though they have very high costs relative to the actual material inputs, because they do not sell very many, because their development costs, because their tooling costs, because the marketing costs in audio are actually relatively high, as we noted with shows. So,
and this is where I go back to necessary and sufficient conditions, where there might be certain situations where, I mean, we could call it just like bad business for why things are more expensive. But there are certain situations where things end up costing more to bring to market. Anyway,
and there are things that the market expects that make things more expensive.
Yeah.
So, but there's a great real world example of all of this is the HD650. Like the HD650 is now significantly cheaper to buy than it was when it originally came out, and inflation corrected, that difference would be even higher. Mm-hmm. But it's because Sennheiser has already recouped all of their R&D cost. Mm-hmm. The HD650 doesn't need any more marketing, and so even though, let's assume that the BOM cost hasn't changed much. It may have changed, but if we assume that it hasn't, their overall profitability on that project has become significantly greater as they've recouped all of the
Well,
costs.
they've also
Although
done
they're
really weird stuff with the whole 6XX thing, which is, to me, seems more like they're trying to get a shot in the arm for, like, you know, a mass market appeal with something that, as you say, they don't have to recoup R&D costs
an
for
invisible variable here for us is what the actual profit margin is on this product.
Yeah,
Like-
we don't know.
Yeah, so one reason that the 650 could be cheaper is because headphones are in general more competitive with it now than they were 20 years ago.
People would argue that it's not, or that they're not. But
Well,
still.
I mean, they'd be wrong. Like,
Yeah.
objectively, the HD 600 when it came out was, if not in a class of its own, it was still one of the better headphones that existed. And there were a lot of headphones at the same price or higher that were a lot worse. And there were not very many that were cheaper that were better. So,
Here's a question for you, Blaine.
Yeah.
Do you think that the K371 is better than the HD650?
no.
Okay.
Whoa.
So
I
what
don't
prompted
think
that-
almost any high impedance headphone is better than a headphone that has low acoustic impedance.
Sorry, what? Say that again.
Well, the K371 is a high acoustic.
High
output
acoustic. Okay,
impedance,
sorry.
but,
Yes, yeah.
so it's-
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Um,
it's just a worse tech. I mean, it's necessary in many cases. You need
Yeah.
noise isolation for something, or you need really low levels of distortion
Okay,
in the bass at very high.
Let me
output levels,
rephrase.
but-
Do you think the K371's frequency response is better than the HD650's?
On whose head?
Yours.
Probably not. I have glasses. It'd leak.
Oh, you haven't tried it?
No.
Okay, gotcha. No, I'm just curious because it's like, if you, like, the fact that the HD650 rolls off in the bass compared to K371's bass shelf, I'm curious if we think that is a competitive headphone with the HD650.
Well, I mean, again,
Blaine doesn't EQ his HD 800.
I know,
So-
that's why, like, it's just,
He has anti-sibilance.
So I'm not as concerned. I mean, the thing is, I mean, well, actually, here's an example. So something I've been listening to music on a fair bit recently, and this is not a great headphone, but is this thing, the little Bose Ultra Open. This has literally no output below 100 hertz. You would be surprised how much of my music sounds exactly the same.
Yeah, and this is why we just shouldn't ask Blaine for his opinion.
Well, no, it's not because I can't hear down there. It's because I listen to a fair amount of music that really has
yeah,
no
but that's
low
still
bass.
unique
No,
to you.
what I
in a way
mean
that,
is that you have bad taste.
yeah,
Yes, I can see that. I can see that.
Skill issue, I think, is
yeah. All right, so let's go to the next spicy take here. Pure
Oh wait,
copper.
wait. No, there. I shouldn't bully poor Cello. Cello did have a comment.
Okay,
which
okay.
was-
You should abandon personal HRTF and headphone research and focus on the obviously superior loudspeaker field.
Sorry, Cello.
not everyone has space for speakers or wife approval factor.
But we do wanna
the
do
wife,
more.
wife approval impedance is a problem.
I mean, even if you don't have a partner, the fact of the matter is that speakers do impose on your neighbors. Like, if you
Yes.
live in an apartment, your neighbors will hear your speakers if
And-
you're playing them at the levels that you would want to.
And I
realistically.
like my neighbors, my neighbor in particular. I do want to get a subwoofer, but, like, you know, it's like, how much do I like my neighbor?
Yeah.
It's
Even if you even wife acceptance factor is obviously like funny meme, but like even if your partner is okay with like speakers, sometimes they're in the room with you and they don't want to be listening to what you're listening to. And
or even beyond that, knowing that you are imposing on other people can lower your enjoyment of things.
Yeah,
Like, there are
exactly.
plenty of times when I have perfect permission to play things on speakers, but I'm like, the windows are wide open, there are people outside. It's not that they would be mad. It's just like, I'd be aware that I'm imposing on the public space.
Well, and you'd also be embarrassed about your terrible taste in music.
I am completely unembarrassed about my terrible taste in music. I have owned that every single
Okay,
time it
how about
comes
this?
up.
You are doing a courtesy to the world by not inflicting that upon them.
Yeah, I'm being conscientious.
There
There's
you
a
go.
very big difference between
See-
being conscientious and being embarrassed.
The difference is that, unfortunately, this isn't something that other people are thinking about when they are on the bus and they just decide to blast music from their iPhone without any headphones.
This
and
should be
just-
met with hanging.
I agree. It's like, what are you doing? You know. Anyway, It's also one of the reasons why headphones are a net good for the world.
Yeah,
Audio
and headphones, like if we just look at market, like share, headphones in the last, like John Olive talks about the reason that they did all of their headphone work was because headphones were starting to become hugely popular compared to speakers. And they had done all of this work on speakers, but they had no equivalent work on headphones. But like the business needed to adapt because people were buying headphones and not speakers anymore.
Yeah.
So Cello's take is unfortunately not, like, I totally understand the rationale. Like speakers are just better than headphones for the most part.
Objective.
In
But
terms of creating the illusion of a sound source outside of the head, they are inevitably better without
Yeah.
incredibly strong DSP.
but headphones are more practical, and so the realities of people who care about sound quality are going to have to think about headphones.
All right. Let's do like a couple more because I do have to end the stream.
You do?
Yes,
I've got plenty of battery.
I know you do.
Let's see. Okay, one I want to address just because it made me do a fucking double take is Jamie says people's attention spans are getting shorter and short AI movie summaries are getting very popular on YouTube. Are they? Are AI music summaries the next big thing? Is that a thing? People
I've
just
never heard of
watch an AI
I so
summarize.
hope TikTok gets banned.
it. Oh, didn't that?
Oh,
get
it
banned?
will in a year if they don't
Oh, okay.
sell.
Which they said they aren't going to. So
I mean,
so
we've seen a
people
lot of this
get
on YouTube, right?
summaries of movies from an AI.
We're content creators, and so we've got a bit of an insight into what does well on YouTube and how that's changed over time. And there's definitely been a very strong correlation with stuff that keeps you hooked, and it's a short attention span pleasing stuff, the kind of ADHDification of content.
That's why none of my videos do well.
And well, let's think, longer form content on YouTube nowadays doesn't do as well. Well, there's a bit of a spread. There's either podcast style stuff that you can listen to whilst you're doing other kind of things, so really long form content, or very short form content that you don't need to pay attention to for more than about 10 seconds. And
the new name.
I don't
of
think
this,
AI music summaries, just because the effect that you get from music is not informational. It's not a story.
I have a take on that.
But I think AI music is going to be a big thing, unfortunately.
People watch that weird guy, the Needle Drop, whatever his name is, Anthony Fantiano. People are already going, and I've never understood why people want music reviewers.
Okay, but people don't watch him
already
for
going.
the review of the music, though. People
Well,
watch
what do they
him
watch
because
him
he's for the entertainment factor. There's a lot of people, dank pods. Realistically, there's not that many people who are genuinely making purchase decisions based on what dank pod says.
Well,
It's
maybe, I don't know.
There might be, I'm not sure, but it's in large part about the entertainment. That's what it's there for, and there is an underlying thing. It's like, there's panel shows you have on TV. It's not actually about who's going to win the quiz. It's about the jokes that get told along the way.
That is actually very much a British thing. In America, we generally do not have panel shows.
Oh, that's true. You guys don't have panel shows.
Well, we have them, but our panel shows aren't comedian. It's one of the reasons that I've started watching a bunch of British panel shows, because here it's just some random schmo.
Do you watch QI? You should watch QI.
Oh, I love QI.
QI's great.
I've been enjoying Taskmaster a lot, though. I'm almost caught up.
Taskmaster's amazing. We are very off topic. Sorry, but some of those shows are great. Go watch Taskmaster. Go watch QI.
So there is a distinction, though, of panel shows are different across the pond in here, and it's a bit the concept of an entertaining persona doing things to some degree, I think, kind of actually came to the US with YouTube, right? Like we had some personality focused shows before that, but a lot of our shows that featured people were actually much more about a topic. So I guess we learned.
I think to answer the question, I don't think that music summaries could possibly provide what people look for in music in the same way that movie summaries can. Some people, a lot of people are genuinely happy to just kind of know what happened in the movie. But with music, that's not the point of it. You can't actually get the feeling of that song from hearing someone tell you about it.
Why would you be happy just hearing what happens in the movie in a summary?
Because there's a social value in that too.
Ain't nobody got time to
Oh,
watch
so it's
that
like
shit.
to get the reference.
People are talking about the movie. You maybe don't want to watch the whole thing, but you kind of want to know what's going. I feel like that's almost like people like wanting short summaries of the news. Like
Yeah.
they want to just know what's happening in the cultural world, and so if they can know the basic plot of the Dune movies, that's helpful for them. And so I think that
They want to get
that's
the
a
Stilgar
factor in it.
reference.
I do it for movies that are like universally renowned as bad, and I know I'm not going to watch. There's a channel called Pitch Meetings who does very entertaining kind of summaries of movies.
but-
Which
So pitch meetings, and there's things like this. Like there's that channel which is like my ex loved this channel. It was like videos explained by an idiot. So it was like satirical
Oh,
commentary on. But I mean, like those ones, it's an entertaining
yeah,
rehash. The point
Well, it
that
has
you're
to
not
be.
there for the information. But an AI would not do that. Like an AI, I don't think could keep stylistic theme that well.
Not yet, but honestly, it potentially could.
mean, yeah.
On a sort of broader answer to that question, though, I think AI music is going to be a thing. Have you seen some of the stuff that's been made recently?
Oh yeah, it's incredible.
It's incredible and scary, and some of them
yeah.
are hilarious.
There I Ruined It on YouTube here has done some pretty incredible and hilarious things. I would definitely recommend checking them out.
Oh, listener says 8 out of 10 cats. I also would agree that that is a good
8
show.
out of 10 cats is good.
8 out of 10 cats is a classic.
Yeah.
AI is scary.
AI is scary.
That's terrifying.
AI is linear regressions taken to their logical conclusion.
You would say that. How are your batteries doing?
My batteries are fine.
Well, my batteries are not, so I need to go deal with that. So
You're not using a dummy battery?
no, I meant my personal. I'm actually
Oh,
not.
Fun
because-
fact, I
battery.
have a dummy battery, but it just didn't work.
Yeah, so
Oh.
he needs to get a new one.
And probably a capture card.
Yeah, I would recommend a capture card as well. That's yeah. Headphones should be reviewed after EQ to reviewer preference.
What?
Good take. Actually, no. Headphone reviews should include a segment where the headphone is reviewed with an EQ and a segment where the headphone is reviewed without an EQ.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to say,
Yep.
don't just review it after EQ, because
Yeah.
Well, yeah, many people are never going to want to use EQ.
Yeah. Anyways, on
Wait,
that,
there's a really important question.
okay, one last one, and then I have to go.
Final question. Does Resolve wear the same hat every day, or does he have a small collection of Carhartt hats that he shuffles between?
I will leave that up to your imagination.
And on that bombshell.
It's time
It's
to
time
end.
to end. Now we're gonna get sued by Amazon.
Well, no, they don't own on that
Oh, right,
bombshell.
okay.
That's why he had to switch to on
Right.
that immense
Terrible.
disappointment.
Right, so we're gonna be. It's the BBC who's coming after us.
Yeah, no, the Beeb is going to crawl up our
It's okay.
ass.
We
It's gonna
have
be
Cameron. We
terrible.
can just say we have
And
someone
we
British.
can
so it's okay.
we can fight off the British.
We've done it before.
It's true.
Although
We
the last
haven't.
time they
Us
did burn down
Canadians,
the
you
White
know.
House. Well, no, I've done it.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So we'll see you guys in the next live stream. Thanks to everybody for joining. Thanks to all the folks watching and your wonderful questions. Big thanks to headphones.com for making all of this possible. If you guys are interested in the rest of our stuff, check that out. Some of it will be in the description. All the technical deep dives. You can buy headphones there. You can talk to customer service, but then also join our
okay?
Discord.
just go say hi, see
Yeah, just
how
to
they're
say
doing.
hi. Just see how Alan and April are doing.
You can join our forum.
Yeah. We have a forum. That's where all the measurements get posted and so on. Okay, that's enough of that. Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.